Absolutely not. All right, we're going to call to order the May 10th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting. Roll call.
Chair Simpson.
Here.
Vice Chair Griffin.
Here.
Commissioner Flores.
Here.
Commissioner Kai.
Here.
And Commissioners Rettig, Walker, and Matzinger are absent.
Thank you very much. We have on the consent agenda, the April 11th Planning Commission meeting minutes. Did everybody have an opportunity to read that? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. Council liaison comments.
And the
Announcement.
council liaison is not here, but I just wanted to let you all know and the public know that the council and the budget committee is beginning their budget committee meetings this Thursday, and they'll be having the next 3 Thursdays budget committee meetings. So all are invited to attend and or review the budget and provide comments.
And so the budget meetings are held in this room at,
In this room, I believe from 6 to 9. But don't quote me on that.
we just did. You're on a recorded line, ma'am.
Well, I believe it's 6 to 9.
Okay, it's posted on the website
on the
for any
website,
clarification. All right, as is the budget. All right, staff announcements. Connie?
Okay, I'm happy to announce that we have made an offer and have had that accepted for a senior planner who will be starting with us on May 30th. Can I say who that is, or? Her name's Carrie Brunnicke. We're really excited to have her join us. She has a lot of experience doing comprehensive plans. She worked in the former city of Damascus, so she's gone through very intense public involvement in helping create comprehensive plans and that. So we're really excited that she's going to be joining us later this month. We've completed interviews for the associate planner and hope to be making an offer this week on that. So hopefully I'll have an update for you on our associate planner position at our next meeting. The only other announcements I have is that the Oregon Street Townhomes project has been resubmitted in conformance with the recent text amendment that was approved by the Planning Commission and City Council. So that should be coming to you, my guess is going to be the first meeting in June. And we have follow-up from last meeting with the high school wanting to do a Planning Commission public workshop that we've done in the past to start talking about the refinement plan for the Sherwood West area and looking at that. So we are looking to schedule that within the next month, either next meeting or the meeting after that. Julie, do you want to say something?
Yeah, it might be good if we can maybe add a little item at the end of the agenda to discuss kind of where this hearing is at and in relation to the next meeting, and kind of see when we think that public work session might be best fit. So if we can maybe talk about that at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
That would be great.
All right.
And I believe that is all I have for announcements. Thanks.
All right. So our next item is community comments, and community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda. And looks like I have at least one coming my direction. Again, if you wish to testify tonight, either under community comments or under our hearing new business item, please fill out one of these blue cards and turn it in to a staff member on this side of the room. And before we start, I will probably pronounce every single name wrong. I don't do it intentionally, but it just is my luck. If I try and guess that it's got a particular pronunciation, I guess wrong. So I'm sorry ahead of time. Douglas Sump.
Can I come up here?
Yes, please. And yeah, so don't worry about it. So when you sit down, you'll want to pull the microphone close to you. And press the button until the light turns green. It'll take a second or two. And then if you just start your name and address for the recorded record.
Okay, my name is Douglas Sump, and I'm at 16882 Southwest Roosevelt Street, Sherwood. And my new business is I know they're going to widen Roy Rogers to 4 lanes within a couple years from now, and they're probably planning it right now. And I was wondering if the city of Sherwood would advocate for sound walls to protect our livability in our backyards, because our backyards abuts right up to Roy Rogers now, and it's very noisy, very smelly. And talking to Michael Mills from Washington County, he is a neighborhood planning fella from Washington County, and he said that going to you first would be a big plus instead of just trying to get the county to do it by ourselves. And I just wondered how you guys would feel about advocating for us.
Okay, so this is the first time it's come before us, and as a citizen volunteer, I only have so much experience based on whether this type of question's been brought to me before. All I know is that it's probably a Washington County road,
Right.
and when it comes through to our community, it would go to our staff for comments. So Julia, do you have a process that we as a community can be engaged in the decision-making on that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I don't believe it will come to the Planning Commission or Council for formal action, but I appreciate the comment. As staff, we certainly want to know what concerns are out there so that we can advocate for what people want. And that said, the county will also have a lot of public involvement opportunities through their process and have opportunities for you to provide comments through that process as well. But at the staff level, I think we would definitely be advocating for whatever is needed to help make sure that it's less impactful as it can be.
So does the city have a link to like the Washington County website, or can we reach out to Washington County to get an update?
Yeah, I
through the
don't know
staff?
that it's quite there yet. Bob, certainly when it is, we will have information on our website and links to the county's website. Bob, are you aware of it being far enough along for formal public outreach to be happening?
Only what the county has put on their webpage is what I would look to as far as what's available information. My own personal knowledge, based on what I know, they haven't released the plans yet, based on the combining of the projects, the waterline project, the extension of the project down to Alton Sherwood Road. It's changed things a little bit, so I really don't know what they have as far as that. I haven't gotten anything in quite a while, so.
Does the county usually reach out to you when it comes to transportation when it's that road?
For this particular road, I will receive a set of draft drawings, their review drawings. At that point, around 90% review, I should be receiving that, and I can definitely provide comments on citizen concerns and other things, because there are other things that I'm looking at that need to be incorporated
Excellent.
into the plan.
Is it possible to make an interested parties list so that as this information comes forward, it gets posted out on the website, and that way you can stay engaged? It is going to be a hearing by Washington County, not by this body.
Correct, but I was just thinking that just to get ahead of it, I know they're in the planning stage now.
And this is the time that you need to
And
do it. That's great.
To mention it to them now, if of course, we're gonna mention it to them. Like I say, I've called a few people there, but like I say, the neighborhood liaison, basically, Michael Mills, he said to come here and ask you guys, what is your, how do you advocate? How do you get the city of Sherwood to advocate for us to make it a bigger impact on the county planning commission than just a couple of people going before them?
Well, I think we've started the ball rolling, and, like I said, it's new, and we're not having gone down this path before. I don't know what else to do other than to direct staff to create an interested parties list, keep you updated through our website, but you definitely need to stay in contact with Washington County since they're the ones that are going to be having the hearing, so.
Right. So you say you're going to be involved now, but to what extent?
Well, we as a planning commission probably can't be involved at all because it's not going to, as a hearing, be it won't be heard by us, and we don't make public policy. The city council makes the public policy.
Okay.
So,
If you're interested, I think we could put it as an agenda item for a future meeting, and we could talk about whether we think sound walls are good, and if we want to make a formal recommendation from the planning commission that we can forward.
And
to
I,
them.
so I really appreciate you coming and talking about this. I think what I will do is reach out to the county as well, make sure that we have updated information and links on our website, and maybe we could even invite them to come and do a presentation like they've done on other projects, just to let you guys know what's going on, and that would give you an opportunity also to maybe chime in a little bit more in the public to become more aware at the local level of what's happening.
Because this is the beginning of the process. There's Roy Rogers and there's 12th and Sherwood Road. And so we definitely want to stay connected to what Washington County is going to be planning within our community.
May I give somebody, Michael Mills's information, because he's kind of like the point man for community, neighborhood.
We have his information.
that,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Am I done?
He's known
And
at the county.
I have no more intelligent questions, but we are definitely interested because we want to be part of planning our community. And that has always been,
Our backyard
Challenge.
livability has gone, well, Roy Rogers used to be Sherwood Shoals.
yeah, Sherwood, yeah.
And very quiet road since we've been there 20 years. And it's got noisier, smellier and smellier, and we'd like our livability back.
Yeah, and I can understand that too. So we as a community would like to have input into how Washington County is going to plan their roads that are coming through our community. So I think this issue that you brought up is going to be, I think it's going to be perfect because the timing is good for the rest of the huge project that's coming through that area. So, all right.
Okay, just keep checking in with your website and seeing
Yep.
what's going on with it, or?
Yep, yes, and who's the,
I will are you going to stick around for a little while? You weren't going to. I
Okay.
I'll buy your list.
here's his,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah,
filled out the
I'll
form.
get in contact with you and get you my information so that we can keep you updated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks.
All right, any other community comments? All right. All right, we are going to move on to new business, which is our public hearing. And I have a script that needs to be read. The public hearing on SP 16-10, CUP 16-06, and VAR 17-01 Cedar Creek Plaza is called to order. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report, 15 minutes. Questions, if any, by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. The applicant will have 30 minutes, split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each, and the rebuttal from the applicant will be the remainder of their 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing, and no other comments will be heard from the public or the applicants. There'll be final comments by staff, up to 15 minutes, questions of staff, if any, by the commission, and then discussion by the commission. A decision may be made by the planning commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the blue testimony forms and submit it to the planning commission secretary. The chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come forward to speak, please state your name and address for the record and make sure that the green light on the microphone is on. In reaching a decision on the application, the commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. There are 2 copies of the staff report available in the room this evening. The testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again with enough detail to allow the commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. For this hearing, the Planning Commission will make the final decision, and any appeal will be appealed to the city council. At this time, I would like members of the commission to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. So I would like to disclose that Justin Kai and I spoke regarding the application. Mainly, it was going over the information that was provided and the process involved in what the hearing was going to be tonight. Anyway, some of the questions that were asked are going to be the same questions that we asked tonight. And the comments, again, were related to the process, and it does not impact my ability to participate in or make an impartial decision tonight. One of the examples was a question regarding ODOT's authority and how they control Highway 99. Justin's one of our newest Planning Commission members, and it was, again, process questions.
And our discussion does not affect my ability to make a decision as well.
Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any planning commissioners' members' ability to participate this evening? All right, then we will move on to staff. Matt?
Thank you, Chair, fellow commissioners. Matt Street presenting for staff. Project before you tonight is the Cedar Creek Plaza, or Site Plan 1610, Conditional Use Permit 1606, and Variance 1701. The project is located northerly of Highway 99 and southerly of Edie Road. The existing Providence Medical Building you see on the slide in front of you is part of the project. The zoning on the site is retail commercial. The surrounding zoning is retail commercial on the north, general commercial on the south and west, and medium density residential high with a PUD overlay on the northwest. This slide shows the site as it exists today, and so I wanted to go through some of the existing uses for you. As was stated previously, the Providence Medical Building is on one of the northern parcels. The center parcel features an existing single-family home, and the parcel to the south has an abandoned mobile home park that is currently there. I also wanted to mention that there are existing high-density residential housing directly contiguous to the site on the west. The project basically consists of two different elements before you tonight. The first element is the assisted living facility you see to the north. The second is more the commercial center to the south. To a small extent, the parking for the Providence building is also going to be reconfigured, and we're going to discuss that a little bit more later on. But I wanted to take a moment to clarify which applications cover what, because it can be a little bit confusing. The site plan itself covers the entire site that you see in front of you here in red. The conditional use permit is covering two different structures that are proposing specific uses that require a conditional use permit. The first is a gym that's proposed in Building A, and the second is the assisted living facility that's proposed to the north of the site. The variance specifically addresses scenic corridor requirements, and we're going to go into great detail on that in a little while. I also wanted to mention the seemingly hole in the center of the project. The applicant is proposing to leave that vacant for now. They are proposing a future use on that project, possibly a hotel. They're not sure right now, but it's not part of the application before you today. So they're just basically developing all around it and leaving that to be developed with a future application when they decide to come forward with that. So to go over the project description for the commercial center, it includes a Building A, which is, as we discussed, a fitness building, proposed to be a fitness building. Buildings B, C, and F are proposed for retail uses. Buildings D and E are proposed to be restaurants. All of them together are 46,000 square feet total, and the whole project site is basically 13.17 acres, and it features 526 shared parking spaces, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the parking in a moment as well. The second part of the project is the assisted living and memory care facility located to the north. This features a central kitchen. It is 3 stories. It's about 143,000 total square feet, so it's a large structure. The project also features a water quality basin with a bridge. This is intended to kind of act as a landscape amenity for the project. It includes a walking path that surrounds the entire project site. It includes a garden that backs to the residential area. And it features a contained memory care courtyard. And there are several recreational spaces in the project as well, such as bocce ball, game rooms, even theaters, and salons to get your hair cut right there in the building as well. The third main aspect of the project today is the reconfiguration of the Providence parking lot. Right now, this is an outline of the Providence project as it sits in the project. You can see the assisted living facility is actually going to be placed where some of the parking exists today as proposed by the applicant. Here's an image of what that actually looks like on the site. So they're proposing to reconfigure the parking into the red space you see on the slide in front of you here. The parking count is going to basically stay the same as it is today for Providence. However, it's also important to note that the entire project is proposing to share the parking lot through the use of a reciprocal parking agreement. And so that even though the parking is available for each use, close to that use, they're all proposing to share that in the future. In total, there is a surplus of parking on the site for all the different proposed uses. And it's also important to note that the future pad site that's located in the center was not factored into the parking from staff's calculations or perspectives. So when that use does come in, they're going to have to fend for themselves on the parking and make sure they have their own parking totals on site. The variance I wanted to orient you a little bit with, the variance is actually covering just a small portion of the site. It applies to the site along Building C as it applies to Highway 99. You can see Highway 99 here and the sidewalk, which is right here, and the drive-through for the building. The red line you see here is the property line. The code requires a visual corridor along Highway 99 of 25 feet. The applicant is requesting a 3-foot reduction, and they would like to use the right-of-way to count towards that scenic highway corridor. And we're going to discuss that in a little bit more detail later on. The project features 2 points of vehicular access. Although there's currently 3 points of access along Highway 99 for the old mobile home park and the existing single family, the applicants are only proposing to use the one. The primary access point for the project will be taken from Edie Road, and a new signal is required based on the traffic study and based on our review of the project. We're going to discuss this in a little bit more detail later on as well, but the vehicle access on Madera Terrace will be used for deliveries and emergency access only. Staff has also added a condition of approval to the project that would require the incorporation of a pedestrian-only access in an area of the site to the west, where existing right-of-way has a stub right there for the previous project, but that road isn't required to extend into the project site because it's not required by our transportation system plan. Regarding traffic, a traffic study was provided for the project, and it studied the project, including a potential 4-story hotel. So the traffic impacts for the whole site were analyzed as it moves forward. The study also analyzed 9 different intersections. We already talked about the signalization that's proposed at Edie and Borchers. And for Edie Road, it's proposing to restripe some of the lanes between Borchers and 99. It's proposing a new eastbound lane west of Borchers, just north of the project site. And of course, it's proposing the addition of bike lanes, a new sidewalk, and landscape planters. For Pacific Highway, or 99, it's proposing a decel lane and or a right turn lane into the project site. There are 2 different options for the entry into the project from 99. We're going to talk about that in a moment as well in more detail. It's also going to be providing a bike lane, sidewalks, and landscape planters for the project. Now, there are several elevations in the project because there's many structures, and I didn't want to go through every single one of them with you. I have them to show you if you did want to see each one, but I was just going to go through a sample of what they look like to show you the basic design of the project. This slide shows Building A, the proposed fitness building, and you can note the awning covering most of the walkways, and there's a different variety of finishes on the structure. This slide shows the elevation for Building B, which is a retail building. And the finishes and the colors are proposed to match throughout the entire project. One of the main differences between the structures to add the variety is a difference in wall projections on the front of the structure. You can see this one here comes up a little higher. This slide shows building C, and you can see, for example, the wall projection here creates a taller massing on the corner of the building. The assisted living facility also features a very modern design with significant articulation throughout to break up the massing of the three-story structure. The roof pitches add a variety of further articulation to the structure. A human scale, as you can see here in this slide, is provided on the first floor through changing finishes and different projections on the front. And there is a porte cochere in the front that will shelter the entrance.
And just for clarification, you said front, but that's actually the parking lot?
The part that faces the parking lot. It's the front of the structure in the sense that that's where the entrance is to
Okay,
the project.
so-
But it backs to Edie.
But so, just for clarification, as a member of the community, the front of the building is what I'm gonna see when I drive by on Edie and Highway 99.
Well, that's
So-
the back of the structure just because of the way the entrance is configured. The
I
entrance faces in
understand,
the parking
I
lot.
understand that, but that'll come up as one of my questions later, so I just wanna be clear that you're talking about from the parking lot view.
Yes.
Okay,
And I've actually included down here in the corner a key that shows you specifically where that view is looking from, and you're correct. The view from this perspective is from the inside of the parking lot. So this illustration shows kind of the back of the structure as it's facing the existing homes. The trash enclosure for this project and the memory care patio are both sheltered. The trash enclosure is actually inside the building. So that won't be something that's viewed by the residents behind. Patios and different pop-outs on the backside add some detail to the upper floor of the facade. Now this is an image looking on the backside from Edie, and so this is the #1 view that the public will see as they go by. This features similar massing breakups and along Edie Drive, and it also has a number of different landscaping features that are also going to help address the relationship between the structure and the street. Now there are 3 different sets of required findings with this project, along with the general findings that we had for the zoning on the project. These 3 follow the 3 different entitlements, which is the site plan, the CUP, and the variance. So let's go into a little bit of detail on those. I'll go over the significant findings for the site plan here. The code requires adequate utilities exist for the project. The site is today served by all the required districts and facilities needed to provide for the project, including trash districts and CWS. All necessary agreements and covenants have been provided or are conditioned for, such as the reciprocal parking agreement that we discussed earlier. The code calls for protection of all significant natural features. The only natural features that were on this site are a number of trees, and while some of those trees are rather large, the appropriate mitigation has been addressed in this project to assure that there will be more trees on the site in the end result than there are today. A traffic study was provided for the project and calls for street improvements and a new signal at Borchers, which we discussed. The design requirements for the project follow a design matrix to comply with the code. While this section can be a little bit more subjective at times, staff feels that it does meet the requirements and adds up with the right totals to find compliance with our code. Last, the driveway. Any driveways more than 24 feet must align with streets. In this case, at Edie, it is that wide and it does align with Borchers across the street. Highway 99 will also likely be wider than 24 feet, but it doesn't have to align with another street because it has a median in the highway. So for the CUP, the criteria for a conditional use permit is very similar to the requirements for a site plan, except there's an additional criteria that requires compatibility with the surrounding development. So what I wanted to do was walk through what's surrounding the site. Commercial development currently exists to the north, east, and south of the site, and this proposal places commercial uses along those frontages, therefore it's highly compatible. To the north is the Sherwood Police Station. The assisted living facility is located opposite of that station, and the assisted living facility's entrance actually faces the other direction and shouldn't pose any nuisances to the station at all, and any traffic impacts should be offset by the new signal at Edie and Borchers. Residential exists to the west and to the north, and the project was designed to minimize the impact on those future homes. For example, the project has that's proximal to Building A. The entrance to Building A is spun around and faces south to reduce the impacts on the neighbors. Pedestrian connections are provided, but vehicle circulation from the high-density project is not provided, so there won't be any cut-through traffic for this project. And the main access is from Edie and Borchers, which is also going to help reduce any potential traffic impacts on that high-density housing project. So the variance requires certain findings be made as well, and primarily it requires that the project meet the intent of the standard from which it wants to vary. So the intent of the visual corridor, which is what they would like to vary 3 feet from, is to really set development back and provide more open feel along Highway 99. And the structures be kept out of that corridor. And in this case, the structures are set back a full 25 feet in compliance with that requirement. And it would include the drive-through in this case, but the drive-through will be screened by low landscaping, and it will still help retain that open feel for the variance. A hardship must exist in the form of topography or lot design or something like that. And in this case, the lot fronting Building C has a small zag in it. You can see here in this slide where the property line actually exists. The variance must also be reasonable. In this case, using the right-of-way as part of the required corridor for the project, it's only shy 3 feet of the requirement for a very small portion of the project site, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later on, which staff feels is reasonable. The hardship cannot be self-imposed, and the irregular right-of-way existed prior to the project development. And placing the 3-foot reduction into the corridor allows for a better internal site design for the project. So more specifically, the structure will be 25 feet from the property line, as shown here. Assuming that the visual corridor is supposed to be landscaped, there is only 12 feet of landscaping proposed from the property line, and 10 feet of landscaping is between the sidewalk and the property line for a total of 22 feet. That's where we get the discrepancy of 3 feet from the 25. Now this variance is only being requested for this 75-foot distance of the project frontage, which is 8% of the total lineal footage along Pacific Highway. There have been similar variances granted for this same kind of impact along Highway 99 by the city in the past. And this variance is seeking, I want to clarify, is also seeking not just a modification for the distance, but it's also seeking to use part of the right-of-way as the actual corridor. And the code specifically says that it's supposed to be private property, so they're seeking a variance from that part as well.
Is that the 10 feet?
Correct, that is 10 feet, you bet.
Matt, can I just clarify for the Planning Commission? We treat visual corridors differently in residential areas than we do in commercial and industrial. And in residential areas, they're allowed to count from the sidewalk and any landscaping in the right-of-way, but we don't allow that in our commercial areas. And so in the past, we have allowed that along Highway 99 through a variance process, which is why we asked the applicant to propose this variance so that you could consider that. There has been some precedent set throughout the city. We have not maintained always it has to be on private property. We have allowed it to count that right-of-way landscaping to meet the intent of having buildings set back and have that landscaping. So I just want to make that clarification that there is a distinction in our code.
Thank you.
Now, while processing the project, there were some issues of concern, and they are generally revolving around the four-sided architecture, the Madeira Terrace access, and the ODOT requirements. So let's walk through each of those in a little bit more detail. The project has been processed using the design matrix from the code. Using this matrix, the applicant and staff feel that the project has collected enough points to be consistent. As you can see here, this is the elevations as they face internal to the project, to the parking area. They look fantastic, and they comply with our required standards from that perspective. However, the rear of the elevations are basically just cinder block with very little articulation. And so let's take a look at where those face. These can have a high degree of visibility from a public right-of-way. For example, Building A is visible from Madera Terrace and from the high-density housing located to the west. The rear the rear elevation of Building B faces Edie and the future assisted living facility. And perhaps most importantly, the rear elevations of buildings C through F face Pacific Highway. Now, these were a concern for staff. We do feel that they did have the right points on the matrix to comply, but ultimately that decision is up to the Planning Commission, and we just wanted to highlight that this was one of our concerns moving forward. As previously mentioned, the project to the northwest is PUD 0203, which was a high-density housing project. I've highlighted the streets here in blue. The project was required to use this area here, shown in red, for emergency access only. However, it's been open and frequently used by the public ever since. This access is now within the project site and has been conditioned for emergency access only, and we've also added a requirement that gates be installed on the project. Let me show you more specifically where those are. This slide shows the area in much more detail. The area in red here is not proposed to circulate in any way. It's proposed for just deliveries, fire use, and emergency access. A gate will be installed on the project here, but we will maintain pedestrian access through that gate or bicycle access through that gate into the future. So it's really just blocking vehicular use from coming through. Further, this project will feature 2 pedestrian access points from the neighboring high-density housing projects. Staff feels these 2 access points for pedestrian are important to provide compliance with our comprehensive plan. So now let's talk about the ODOT concerns with the project. City staff and the applicant have been working very closely with ODOT through this project on the street requirements for Pacific Highway and to a smaller extent on Edie as well. ODOT has provided 2 different options for the access off of Pacific Highway. The first one is just a right in, and that's it. No right out, no other turns. If the applicant does that, ODOT has said that basically the infrastructure improvements will be just along the project frontage, as you can see here. However, they left an option for the applicant to get a right in and a right out. The main difference is if they do that, ODOT has asked for improvements, an extra lane, matter of fact, coming all the way down to this point. So the applicant hasn't, as far as I know, the applicant hasn't decided which one yet, but they're probably leaning a lot more towards just the right in. Additionally, you can see here that ODOT has required some improvements along Edie, and we've accommodated all those into our conditions of approval. So this brings me to my recommendation, but before we went into the recommendation, I wanted to go over the memo with the Planning Commission. We have extra copies of this at the back for anybody who would like to take a look at this as well. The memo does seem a bit large, we agree. So let's go over what exactly is in the memo. First off, we have one additional email that was provided to us from a member of the public who was giving us some suggestions on better ways to address traffic in the area. She pointed out some of her concerns with traffic in the area. We've shared this with our I want to say traffic engineer, but that's not right, with our city engineer. And he's indicated concerns with that as well, but we provided that to you here for your review today.
He's expressed concern with the memo or the application.
With some of the recommendations in this, because some of the recommendations that were provided are off-site to the project and outside the scope of the project, and so they wouldn't really fall on the project to make any of these improvements.
Got it.
And some of the improvements that are recommended, we've actually have incorporated into the project in one way or another. But we can provide more detail on that if you like. The community meeting that the applicants had with the community, we inadvertently left those meeting minutes out of your staff report package. We apologize for that. We've now included those in here as well. The applicant can go over in a little bit more detail what happened at that meeting and summarize for you a lot better than I could what happened at the meeting and what some of the concerns from the public were during that community meeting. Item C on here, there were a number of different conditions, 5 different conditions of approval that were mentioned in the body text of the staff report, but staff inadvertently left them out in the collection of conditions of approval at the end of the staff report. So they were in there, we made reference to them, we just didn't organize it and put them in the end as well. So we've taken those 5 conditions unchanged and now added those to the end where they belong in the staff report. Going through, on item D, going through the project with ODOT and the applicant, we were trying to make the project as flexible as we could for the applicant to implement. This is a very challenging site. It has a lot of challenging features, and the applicant indicated a lot of concern for having some flexibility on the build-out of the site. Now, to reiterate, most of this flexibility they were looking for is for underground improvements, not necessarily the structures or the phasing of when they build the structures. It's primarily the infrastructure improvements on the street and underground. And so staff went back and forth a lot on how best to address this. We talked about adding phasing to the project and what that phasing would mean. In the end, what we decided to do was just require a phasing agreement with the city to be turned in later on down the road. And that allowed us to revise our conditions in a way where it collapsed a lot of them. And we got to remove a lot of the conditions that were speaking to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It was just getting a little bit too complex and cumbersome. And so now they can turn in that phasing agreement down the road, and the conditions of approval will mesh much better with that. As the applicants enter into compliance agreements with our engineering staff, we can more hammer out which utilities need to go in when, which street improvements need to go in when, and the timing of those will be a little bit better. And so the conditions have lost a little weight. There's a little fewer of them, but that's generally where a lot of the edits were coming from. Last but not least, there were some edits to the staff report as well, just some Scribner's errors that we've revised in here, and we'll make sure we get that fixed in any notice of determination should the project be approved. So that's the gist of the memo. I don't know if Connie wanted to jump in and clarify anything else on that, but that explains the girth.
The only thing that I would clarify in terms of phasing, because I know that's cumbersome, and we took that out because phasing for development typically refers to we're going to build this part of the project first, and then this part second, this part third, and we're really referring to above ground improvements that the public will see and care about when those buildings are developed to make sure that the traffic improvements are done at the same time. What we were talking with the applicant and what you saw in that first set of conditions talked about phasing of underground improvements, like when the water lines were going and when they're connecting and when the sanitary sewer, which isn't as important. It's very important to the engineers and to make the project work. It's very, very important. And when you put them in during dry weather versus wet weather, it's crucially important to make development work. But in terms of the public and our site plan review, we just want to know they're there. What we're concerned about is when are those buildings going and when are you going to do the required street improvement so that the traffic flows? And from that perspective, their intent is to have things go in one phase. And we have conditions of improvement that should the assisted living be built right before or concurrently with the commercial plaza, we need those traffic improvements on Edie Road. We need those traffic improvements on Edie Road and that traffic signal done regardless of what develops first. Before you can get any occupancy permits, those things need to be done, whether it's the assisted living, the fitness facility, or a restaurant. Whatever goes in first is going to trigger improvements on Edie Road, which is why you'll see prior to any building occupancy, that has to go in. The improvements on Highway 99, if the assisted living facility were to go in first, we don't need 99 improved necessarily to make the assisted living facility work because they're going to be circulating off of Edie Road. 99 improvements are really for the commercial development because that's when you're going to get the access to there. So the commercial development needs Edie Road and it needs Highway 99. The assisted living facility needs Edie Road, not so much 99 until that commercial, because you're not going to be able to drive through that until the commercial does, and you're not going to be able to access 99 until that commercial does. So there's conditions that will talk about that, occupancy that we won't give that to ensure that those above ground improvements that we need are done, and they can be done concurrently all at the same time, or they can be done the assisted living first or the retail first. And we've got conditions that assure that those public improvements that we're seeing above ground, the traffic that we really care about, that are done. The underground stuff is very important. It's just less important that we don't, I'm not as concerned that the sewer, it's going to work because they aren't going to work. You're not going to get toilets to flush. You're not going to get buy off on occupancy from our building inspector if you don't have all those things done. But the phasing of that is more development driven and season of the weather condition than true phasing as we've known it in the past.
Thank you, Connie. So with
No
that,
wrong with
staff recommends approval of the project with the conditions discussed in the staff report and of course included in the memo as well. Myself, staff, and the applicants are available for any questions you might have.
Okay, so, thank you. There are, and I'm just gonna put this out, because the commission usually, when we get a packet of information before the meeting, would take a short enough recess to be able to read and assimilate the information. That is unlikely to happen in the next reasonable period of time. So what I would propose, if the commission is in agreement, is that we hear from the applicant and we hear from the members of the audience that are here, the citizens and the neighbors that want to testify. And then after we get all that testimony, then we can determine if we're gonna take a break and read all this or what other action we're gonna take. Does that seem reasonable? Because I have a lot of questions for staff, but they may be answered through the applicants, or they may be questions that the neighbors are gonna ask, and I give them an opportunity to have their voices heard. Does that seem reasonable? So we'll set this, okay, so I got a general head nod that we will proceed with the applicant's testimony as soon as Matt goes. And I have one blue card, is that it? That is, oh, they're all listed down below. Very efficient, thank you. And there are lots of names, but I'm just gonna pick Ryan Shira. I'm gonna guess them all. Callie Bader, Terry Kraus, and Jennifer Danziger. Yeah, a chance that they'll be right. So if you could begin with your, make sure the microphone is close to you because it's recorded, it's broadcast, and the audience members need to be able to hear what you're saying. And you start with your name and address for the record.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Ryan Scher. I'm with Deacon Development. Address is 901 Northeast Gleason Street, Portland, Oregon, 97232.
Can everybody hear him? I'm having a hard time.
I'll speak up.
Thank you very
And
much.
into the microphone. Thank you. Well, Commissioners, thank you for having us this evening. We're actually very excited about this project. I have with me Callie Bader with Rimbold Properties. We got together. It's been a long time now. We're probably a year and a half, maybe even longer on this project. But we identified the piece of property and teamed up with Providence in terms of trying to create a mixed-use project that had a mix of uses that was compatible within a retail center, but then also compatible with a Providence medical group. And Rimbold Properties has a long history of doing quality assisted living facilities in the Northwest. So, teaming up with Rimbold made all the sense in the world with ourselves and Providence in terms of redeveloping this property into a true mixed-use center, not just residential with retail on the bottom. We're talking real mix of uses here. And we've proposed a quality project throughout, both from a material standpoint and from a site design standpoint. We've got a significant amount of landscaping, a significant amount of quality and durable materials, building materials, along with building design. So we've teamed up with Incrum for the senior housing and McKinsey Architects and engineers for the retail, both the site and the retail buildings themselves. So again, going through this process has been long, but we're very happy to be here today and to get to this point. I'm sure staff is very happy to get to this point as well. And we also want to thank staff. Staff's been great to work with. Because this project is so complicated, we've had to have multiple meetings in order to figure out what means what, and also who has jurisdiction over what. So it's been a long road, but we're happy to be here, and we're proud of the project, and we really hope it's a benefit to the city of Sherwood and the neighborhood and the overall community. So I don't want to eat up all the time. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric Adams, our land use planner, and he's going to go through the slides and the presentation.
Yep, I found when I was rereading this, there's Eric Adams and Ralph Henderson, the two names that I could have probably pronounced correctly.
Good evening. My name's Eric Adams with Mackenzie, land use planner for our project team. Mackenzie's street address is 1515 Southeast Water Avenue, Suite 100, Portland, Oregon. Make sure I get the zip code right, 97214. As Ryan just shared with you, our project team includes both Deacon Development and Rimbold Properties. Mackenzie is conducting the architecture for the retail portion of the project, as well as civil engineering, transportation engineering, land use planning. And then Ankrum Moisen is handling the architecture for the senior housing portion of the project. We have representatives from each of those disciplines here this evening should you have questions that you'd like to explore. I want to start by saying that I really appreciate Mr. Straight's very thorough overview of our project, and so I'll go through our presentation rather quickly as a result, just hit the high points. So again, site acreage of about 13 acres, retail commercial zoning, roughly 46,000 square feet of mixed retail, complemented by approximately 143,000 square feet of assisted living and memory care building that you saw. That, in addition to the current medical office building that Providence has at the site of 42,000 square feet. Our three land use requests include the site plan review, conditional use related to both the assisted living and memory care building, and then the fitness use in building A in excess of 5,000 square feet. And then lastly, the two Class A variance requests that Mr. Straight went through earlier. Here on the screen in front of you then is the aerial of the site. The arrows indicating the approximate locations of where the accesses to the project will be located. Along Edie Road, there's currently the access at Borchers, which is an uncontrolled private driveway. A little bit further to the east, so I'm going to use my laser pointer here up on the screen, is a secondary private access drive, and then further to, to the west is the access easement that extends to Madeira Terrace. All of those would remain intact except for the central access driveway on Edie. That would be removed in order to construct the senior housing building. And then, as Mr. Straight noted, the access from the highway, there's currently 3 locations would be consolidated to a single point, roughly centered on the frontage for a right-in access from the highway. Here showing you sort of a colored rendering of the site with the buildings labeled and landscaping. Some of the key features to point out here include an integrated pedestrian walkway network that will provide direct access from the abutting streets to each of the buildings. So again, up on screen here, from Edie Road to the senior living facility, across and through to the retail portion, and then also from the highway up into the retail portion and connecting to the entrances to each of those buildings as well. As was noted, parking throughout the project will be shared amongst the various uses. That includes retaining the current 175 spaces for Providence's site. They'll basically get redesigned and grouped into this area immediately to the west and south of their office. 98 spaces in total for the senior housing facility, which based on utilization studies that we completed for this project is anticipated to be sufficient for the dynamics of that use. And then the remainder distributed throughout the retail portion of the project. But again, due to that reciprocal parking and access agreement, all of those spaces would be available regardless of which use is involved and where residents or customers, guests, or employees are headed within the project. Focusing on the retail piece in a little bit more detail, again, as I noted, roughly 46,000 square feet of new building space that would include restaurants, retail, office, the fitness use in Building A, roughly 499 on-site parking spaces, which exceeds the total requirement, minimum requirement in the code, but doesn't exceed the maximum allowed. So we're balancing that and making sure that the project works well throughout. Landscaping within that portion of the project is, again, exceeds minimum standards and achieves roughly a 39% tree canopy coverage. Again, using similar images of the building architecture that staff shared with you, our designs achieve at least a minimum of 20% window coverage on street-facing facades. A mixture of 4 different siding materials is used throughout the various buildings. That includes wood paneling, hardy plank, metal, as well as split-face block, smooth-face block. The direct pedestrian connections and accesses that I mentioned earlier. And then throughout the project, the retail portion of the project, we have approximately 1,300 square feet of outdoor patio space to enhance the pedestrian experience within the center, provide for some outdoor dining opportunities, and so forth. Turning now to the senior housing, senior living portion of the project. The breakdown within the building in terms of the type and number of units. We have essentially 109 assisted living units within the building, and then another 20 memory care units. So you have 2 different aspects of care and services that are going to be provided, commensurate staff along with that to ensure round-the-clock care and service for those residents. Again, the 98 parking spaces on site that are proposed, we believe are adequate to meet the needs of the facility, of residents, guests, and employees. And then site-wide, within this portion of the project, landscaping and tree coverage achieve roughly 30%, which meets the standard within the city's development code. One item that Mr. Straight pointed out, and I want to emphasize as well, is that while vehicular access here at the easement to Madeira Terrace has been recommended to be closed by city staff, we have accounted for maintaining and basically reconstructing an existing pedestrian access along the south and west side of that easement area to enable safe travel. At our neighborhood meeting, which I'll discuss here in a little bit more detail in a moment, a number of the residents commented on the importance of children within the neighborhood being able to safely reach bus stops that are along Edie Road. And so that's a large reason for why that's being provided with the project. Turning to the architecture of the building, again, as staff noted, a diverse use of building articulation, roof forms, more than 20% window coverage on all elevations. Along Edie, the building is curved to mirror that curvature of the street and really provide a compatible face along the street, given the importance of compatibility issues, especially with residences on the north side of the street. I do want to point out that there is an entrance, a public entrance, that would be available for residents and guests on this face of the building. So in terms of its orientation and considering whether it's front or back, I think you could look at it from either perspective. Along this portion of the project, the visual corridor landscaping standard is met. There's at least 10 feet of width along the entire frontage. And as designed, it complies with the coverage and spacing and distribution of plants. Again, just showing you then the internal elevation, north perspective with the portico share, the main drop-off and entryway. From a utility aspect and need for safe entry and exit for residents and guests, it's important to have that internal to the site for a variety of different reasons. But like I said before, with the connectivity of pedestrian walkways through the site, guests will be able to reach those other buildings in a safe manner that we believe makes sense from a design standpoint. And then, so just to sum up, with the exception of the variance, which I can go into a little more detail here in a minute, the design complies with all of the development code standards. We have achieved at least the minimum number of points required for the commercial design review matrix as an alternate approach to satisfying the clear and objective standards in the code. Our parking requirements exceed the minimums, but not the maximum allowance. Our overall landscaping plan will result in a net increase of 25 trees site-wide in comparison to current conditions, and that includes retaining 62 of the existing trees. All of our proposed utility systems will be designed to comply with the city's standards for public water, stormwater, and sanitary utilities. And that includes compliance with both Clean Water Services standards and DEQ as well. And then lastly, as staff has noted and as Mr. Scherer noted before, we've coordinated quite closely with both city staff and ODOT staff concerning the transportation system improvements that are required for this project. I wanted to highlight some aspects of those designs here just briefly. So along Edie Road, basically along the frontage of the assisted living building, we'll have continuation of a sidewalk, planter strip, and a bike lane, but also the introduction of an additional through lane, second through lane, to facilitate eastbound travel. And then as you come up to the intersection at Borchers, a new four-way traffic signal. And then as you pass through the intersection and come to the intersection at the highway, there will be a new dedicated left turn through lane and then a right turn lane to facilitate a better traffic flow along Edie and through the intersection to the highway. And then looking along Southwest Pacific Highway itself, to facilitate that right turn into the site, there will be a dedicated right turn lane and deceleration lane into the site, continuation of an existing sidewalk, planter strip, and bike lane along the full frontage of the property, and then to facilitate with safe traffic flow along the highway itself, a gradual extension of the current lane taper for southbound travel. So now turning to the variance, again, Mr. Straight provided a great overview of this request. It is in fact limited to just the 75 feet of the site highlighted here in blue, equating to roughly 8% of the total frontage. The reasoning and basis for that variance was accurately stated by staff, and we concur with their analysis. Last thing I want to touch on is the neighborhood meeting that we held. That was conducted at the Sherwood Center for the Arts on September 12th. Representatives of the project team, including Mr. Scherer and Ms. Bader, were there, along with myself. We had about 40 people attend. Meeting lasted for roughly an hour and a half, and we provided an overview of the project, had examples of the building designs and the site plans for people to look at. In terms of the discussion topics and issues that were raised, not surprisingly, transportation issues, traffic was a large one. We discussed the orientation of the buildings and the uses that were proposed throughout the site, the various things that the project would be incorporating to help mitigate potential compatibility issues, transportation and traffic flow issues. And to my knowledge, we didn't receive any follow-up questions from any of the attendees. We did provide our contact information and also reported email addresses and contact information from those who attended that were interested in reaching out to us, but I don't recall that we received any additional questions. So in general, that was the overall content and purpose of the meeting. I believe it was productive. Probably a few of those folks are in attendance this evening, if I recognize some faces. With that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or if you've got questions for our project team as well.
Just one question, because like you said, transportation is was mentioned quite a bit in the public meeting. Has your team made a decision about what option you're going to choose from the ODOT the two options provided by ODOT?
Yeah, so at this point, the direction is to proceed with the write-in only.
So, and my follow-up questions, and it may not be able to be answered, but it's just going to be, as we go through it, it might be a question for ODOT too, is if you select the write-in option now and then at a later point decide to change it to a write-in, write-out, will they allow you to do that? And you don't have to answer that. It just seems like if you start seeing that your customer base prefers to have an option to exit out on Highway 99, would you be able to then build those improvements after the fact?
I'll answer to the best that I can and say that hypothetically, I believe that option would be available, but I would also expect the same stipulations and requirements that they've laid before us to apply at that time as well.
Okay.
Which are not insignificant in terms of improvements.
They're not, and ODOT may change their mind when the next person comes up and reviews the application. I understand that. So, and then does the difference between the write-in and the write-in, write-out option change the improvements on ED Road? So since there will be no exit onto Highway 99, will there be increased improvement requirements or additional lane capacity on ED Road to accommodate the exiting traffic?
Our analysis in terms of the transportation improvements along ED and the traffic study considered the option of having a write-out, or excuse me, a write-in only.
Okay.
And so the improvements along ED are sufficient to accommodate that scenario.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does, and I will turn to staff to confirm that at some, like, trust but verify, so we will. Sorry.
Ms. Danziger is here as well, and she could probably comment further on that if you.
Okay, there are a lot of people that want to testify, so and seeing that transportation was a big one, I just wanted to get out on the table where we were going with it, so that if it were a known answer to one of the big questions that ODOT presented, we now know how you're going to proceed, so people coming to testify about that option already know the answer ahead of time. I'm sure there's lots of other questions that maybe
Sure.
not, I haven't brought forth. Are there any questions that anybody wants to ask the applicant before we call for public testimony?
I have one that I wanted to clarify. Did you say that, or somebody said that the traffic study took into consideration the possible hotel use of the undeveloped pad?
That's correct.
That the current traffic study factored in the whole picture?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
At a specific number of rooms.
Thanks.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions of the applicant before?
I have questions, but I feel that they would probably be best asked after public comment. So.
Okay, all right, and so I may have written down the time that you used, 18 minutes, does that seem? Oh,
Yes,
look at
there's
that.
12 minutes, 11 seconds remaining.
That
So yes,
was-
that was a good estimate.
That was a good estimate, wow.
That's almost psychic.
Almost psychic.
yeah.
Okay, so that leaves you 12 minutes for rebuttal, and obviously our questions are excluded from your time when it comes back for rebuttal, so.
I'll set the timer on my iPhone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so, I believe Russell has the blue cards.
Oh, I do, sorry. Only two?
So I only have 2 comment cards that people wishing to make comment for the hearing tonight. Again, if you want to testify, you can submit one of the blue cards to the staff at any time, and we'll call your name. Chadley Colson. Chadley Colson. I did start by saying I'm probably going to get most of them wrong, but thank you.
My name is Chadley Colson, and my address, 20364 Southwest Lavender Place in Sherwood. I am here because I, like most other drivers in Sherwood, am concerned about the traffic control concerns at the intersection of Edie Road and Borchers Drive, Edie Road and 99 West, and Sherwood Boulevard and 99 West. Sherwood residents who live on the west side of the city are constantly crossing the highway, as most of the amenities in Sherwood are on the east side. Because of the unbearable traffic conditions at 99 West and 12th and Sherwood Road, residents who live in the north and west corridors of the city are forced to cross the highway at Edie Road. During peak traffic hours, the ability to turn left from Borchers onto Edie is a nightmare. I am relieved that the city included this Edie-Borchers intersection in its capital improvement plan, and that a commercial developer also acknowledged the current traffic flow failures at this site in its traffic impact analysis and are proposing to pay for them. My concern is that the improvements that have been proposed by the developer and approved by the city are not optimally aligned with current and future traffic needs. For example, the traffic impact analysis states allow side-by-side left turn lanes between Highway 99 West and the site access at Southwest Borchers Drive. The need in this location is not to turn left onto northbound 99 West. More drivers are attempting to cross the highway and travel straight. When the road is widened and a new lane is added, it should be a through lane crossing 99 West. This evening at 5:45, I was traveling to a meeting at the YMCA and counted 4 cars turning left, 16 going straight. Similarly, the city needs to address the same issue on the other side of the highway, facing west on Sherwood Boulevard, with options to turn left, right, or cross 99 West. Traffic is often backed up here. The solution to both sides of this intersection is to widen the intersection so 2 lanes of traffic can cross the highway. Part of this is obsolete now, but in the traffic impact analysis on page 20, the table shows that the safe spacing of the right-in, right-out exit to the nearest intersection will not be met per ODOT standards, but the developer is still requesting approval. The city staff report echoes the same concern, but still approves it. Assuming that drivers on the highway will drive slowly here and that customers exiting the development will speed up here. This is too much to assume when it concerns public safety. The impact analysis also assumes that there will be 3 traffic cycles when traffic will not be free-flowing and drivers can exit safely. This is also too much to assume. Only during one traffic signal cycle would cars be able to turn right freely. This would be when northbound 99 West traffic has a green light and a green arrow left turn and all other traffic is stopped. Suggestions for the safety and flow of traffic as pertains to the right-in, right-out entrance exit, as this is a highway with fast and heavy traffic, are 1, either move the right-in, right-out further down the highway, or 2, ask ODOT to remove the merge here and to widen the highway to 3 lanes from Edie to Meineke, as the highway phases in and out of 3 lanes here anyway. Then there is no need for traffic to immediately merge, and those safety issues are less of an issue. Or 3, extend Borchers Drive as a frontage road that runs somewhat parallel to 99 West, as it does to the north of Edie. Extend it all the way to the roundabout at Meineke to allow traffic to enter and exit safely at the traffic light. Traffic is very light at this signal currently. This would allow for more customers to access the development who are approaching from the south of Sherwood. My final concern is that, quoting from the impact analysis, under post-development conditions, queues generally lengthen as traffic volumes increase in the study area. The 2 most notable queuing changes are southbound approach of Borchers to Edie and Highway 99 at Edie, and the vehicle to capacity ratio on Southwest Borchers Drive would increase during both AM and PM peak hours. My suggestion is, please do whatever can be done to address this issue of turning left from Borchers to Edie, not to exacerbate it. You could widen the intersection of Borchers to alleviate the bottleneck effect here. There's enough buffer area.
Don't worry about the timer. Finish
Okay,
what you
I
want
got
to
2 more
say.
sentences. Okay.
We're not going to
So
make
this
you
is my
run
biggest
away.
concern as a driver, is that turning left, okay? Please do whatever can be done to address this issue of turning left from Borchers to Edie, not to exacerbate it. You could widen the intersection of Borchers to alleviate the bottleneck effect here. There's enough buffer area to create a right turn only lane in front of the police station onto Edie Road. Allow 2 lanes to turn left. 1 lane is a dedicated left turn lane, while the other can turn left or travel straight into the development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any chance you have a copy of that so that our staff, because I think, do you have a copy of it? It's in the memo.
Yep.
Oh, it's in here. It's. Oh. Okay.
Before I knew they were making improvements.
Okay. Kind of weird. Okay, that was fabulous. Thank you very much for that information.
If you're willing to share that with us, we'd take that too. Thanks.
All right. Matt Staten.
Good evening. My name is Matt Staten. I live at 21174 Southwest Houston Drive. I actually live in one of the affected areas just to the west of the proposed site. I didn't write anything down in retrospect. Maybe I should have, because the nice lady before me did a fantastic job, and I'm going to come across as a bit of an amateur here.
Or a citizen.
Or
That's fine.
yes.
That's totally fine.
So with that said, I was prepared to come tonight to discuss how the addition of this commercial space so far into my neighborhood, where I live with my neighbors, was going to change the feel of the place. I know that doesn't get to the laws and the regulations on the books. And so I'm not going to speak to that, partially because I feel like this is going to happen anyway. But one thing did strike me, and I didn't see it in the project plan as I read through it. It's possible I missed it with the several hundred pages that there were to go through. But the thing that struck me tonight was the inclusion of the gate on Madeira Terrace. I live on Houston, which is one of the two access points to the neighborhood, and we have a lot of traffic on Houston as is right now. And I know that they have just as much traffic on Madeira. Our neighborhoods both have a lot of children that live there, that play in the neighborhood, that play on the street, and restricting access to Edie from Madeira, forcing it all to come down on Houston, is going to be very, very impactful on the families and the people that live there. It's the number of people coming in and out. As it was mentioned, it's a high-density residential neighborhood, particularly on the Madeira side, where there are condos. North of that, on the Houston side, it's more houses, individual housing. But that said, there's a lot of people that live there. There's a lot of kids, at least on my side. I can think of 8 or 10 kids that run around on a daily basis, especially now that the weather's getting nicer. And I'm concerned, frankly, with the need to put in a gate there. I don't know that it's necessary. I know that there's probably some concerns about people using the access point when there are going to be emergency vehicles and loading vehicles and such, but I feel like that's going to be infrequent enough that having that as an access point for residents could still be warranted, particularly when you consider the impact that it'll have on the people who live there if they don't have that. I wasn't able to make it to the community meeting in September. If I would have known about this then, I would have mentioned it, and hopefully we could have avoided this coming up now. But that's my major concern at this point. Just that traffic is going to be bad enough with the addition of all the shopping, the memory care and assisted living facility. I'm already nervous enough about that. The impact is going to be on it. It's going to be a daily thing for me and for the people in the neighborhood who have to commute to work and go through that. But at least we don't have to see it out of our front doors. But if we have kids who are playing and have to worry about dodging the way of cars coming in and out all the time because we're restricted to one access point, I think that's really the major concern here. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I was given one more card. Mark Newmeyer.
Thank you. My name is Mark Newmeyer. I live at 21145 Southwest Houston Drive. Like the gentleman before me, I'm concerned with the gate at Madeira and the obvious impact that it will have on the access to all of our neighbors who live on that street. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of cars that will be driving past my driveway every day now. If you're not already aware, there was also a unrelated multifamily housing complex positioned right behind Houston to the west. This has caused already cars that are parking on Edie and if I were to estimate a guess, they will soon be parking on Houston because there's not sufficient parking at that complex. These two factors are gonna compound one another. And I too am curious to know if it's possible, and maybe this is a naive hope, how could we learn about the justification for a gate in Madeira and if there's an alternative route? In addition, I'm really concerned that the option to not create a right out onto Highway 99 is going to force all traffic out of the complex at Borchers. I challenge anybody who doesn't know about this intersection to drive it anytime between 3:30 and 6:30 at night. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else want to make comment? And if you want to fill out the blue card afterward, just come up to the front and state your name and address for the record, and then just turn the blue card into the staff before you leave tonight.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, so I wasn't sure I was going to be able to come up. My name is Renee Dorica. I live at 20378 Southwest Lavender Place in Sherwood, 97140. I, too, travel the Borchers to Edie on a regular basis every day to get my kids to the charter school and also Middleton. We're the pocket that's now sent to Middleton. So with that said, there's a lot of traffic that we're trying to get through, and then in the afternoon at 5 o'clock. I also agree with Chadley with the 2 lanes needing to be off of, we need to widen, I think, Borchers and create the 2 left lanes out of there, and also 2 straight lanes across 99 from Edie, because that, again, is the bottleneck. Whenever I came home at 5 from Snyder Park, and the traffic trying to go straight across 99 on Edie going, was backed up all the way to where this care facility would be all the way around the corner. And then Borchers was also backed up all the way around the corner past the restaurant, Manzanillo, whatever. So it just takes forever to get through. And I think that adding to this would just really be a problem. I also, listening to this, am concerned with the right only coming in off of 99, because it didn't make sense how there would be any kind of traffic being able, navigating through an entire parking lot to exit onto Edie, which would then add more traffic onto Edie, especially if there's going to be a hotel and all that. I don't know if that was addressed. I had heard there was. So anyway, those were my 2 concerns about that, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Someone else raised their hand. I don't know if they got a blue card completed. Come on up. Just make sure you turn it in before you leave. Just hand it to the staff member so I don't get in trouble for going off script here and letting, after you're done testifying or right now, you can hand it to her.
My name is Barbara Nordstrom. I live at the intersection of Lindley Way and Houston Drive. I have already seen a tremendous amount of traffic through the neighborhood from Roy Rogers Road to Edie Road. Most of the people who are coming through there now between 4 and 5:30 p.m. do not stop at the stop signs as it is. And with more traffic maybe coming through because of this project, it further endangers the children in this neighborhood and people who walk around there. And you, if you're going to approve this, you need to enforce the laws now and do something about mitigating the traffic. It is terrible, and with the approval of this project, it's going to be worse. And anyone who lives in that neighborhood will suffer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is anybody?
Hi, my name's Miguel Gordillo, 21061 Southwest Madera Terrace. So I'm at the first house, right where the gate would be. And like one of the gentlemen before me said, I'm really concerned with all the traffic on Houston Drive. There's a lot of children, our neighbors, and I know I have neighbors at Houston Drive that have a lot of children. So I just want to go on the record that I'm concerned with the traffic that would be, this would cause on Houston Drive and Madera too, especially when we're taking the kids to school or coming back from school too. So that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, all right, we still have another person wishing to testify. Make sure you turn in your blue card before you leave.
My name is Joyce Carter. I live at 21196 Southwest Madera Terrace. And the gate presents a real problem for the whole community, for Madera Terrace, for Houston Drive. There are so many kids there. They have to get to the school bus. To round everybody out onto Houston is just, I don't see how that's going to work. So I am highly opposed to the gate.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Before I call the applicant up, I think it is a good opportunity for the staff to explain the gate. That is a question that's come up many times. And I think they are do an answer. So let's, Bob, are you going to be able to address that?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Because of this gate, we're well aware of what it is and what it means. I did an analysis close to the beginning of the project. So basically, a little bit of background history. Madera subdivision was approved as a PUD April 22nd, 2003. As part of the land use notice decision, the access drive was described as a temporary access drive that would be reconstructed as a public right-of-way to provide future connectivity to adjacent site development. The temporary access drive is a life safety condition requirement providing 2 access points for emergency equipment to reach lots. Reconstruction is assumed to mean the requirement to comply with city code and design standards for public right-of-way. At the time, the TSP showed Madera extending on, and actually the intent, I think, was to connect up at Borchers Drive at that intersection, which is why it was put in as a temporary access point. Temporary being they needed the secondary access. We will still maintain that secondary access for emergency vehicles. And it meets that requirement. What it's lacking is the connectivity for future access through the TSP. The TSP has changed since then, and that no longer shows as a connective point through the development site. What is it about the access drive that creates a problem for city staff? Number one is that the access drive in itself, technically at the intersection with Edie Road and Houston Drive at Edie Road, doesn't meet the minimum requirements for spacing and site distance standards. if you really want to look into it, there is a distance requirement, basically that says for a local street onto a collector road, your minimum spacing, and I have it here, what was it, 400 feet?
That's what it says in the report.
400 feet. This doesn't meet that requirement. In fact,
How far is it?
based on the configuration of the road and how it comes in at an angle and everything like that, where you have the actual, if you had a center line connections, the actual distance is 97 feet. So you've got basically one building lot, which is true,
Right.
between the two roads. The second is the site distance on that particular corner. There is, the lot itself has a site screening fence and a lot of shrubbery built up. Site distance for a 35-mile-an-hour road is close to 335 feet. And basically, the only way you could actually do that is to tear down the fence, tear down the screening, the yard, and even look at how close it is to the building. I think it clips the corner of the building. So putting that in as an intersection it's not meeting some of those standards. The second issue is the angle at which it meets Edie Road. Our code and our design standards require 90-degree intersection-to-intersection commitments with no more than a few degrees, down to 75 degrees. So you can do a 25-degree offset so that you can have a T intersection basically at 75 degrees. I measured this out. It's at 47 degrees, which means that it is really kicked over quite a bit. So you're actually, to look over your shoulder down the road to see something, you'd have to really turn your head around, which is not what we want. We want that 90-degree intersection point. Configuration and stuff like that, there is an existing, what you would say is, oh, it comes in at 90 degrees right now, but that 90-degree segment is actually within the right-of-way and the physical structure of the proposed Edie Road improvements. So if you take that away and say 90 degrees from there, you actually have to move the road down quite a ways to make that work per our standards. So the configuration of the road, this access road, number one, was designed as a temporary access easement. It's put in as an easement. It's not even dedicated right-of-way. It wasn't intended to be a through road at that point. It was supposed to go through the development site, hook up to Borchers with a TSP long ago, which has been changed, and we have safety considerations along with this. It doesn't meet those standards. Do I want to close it off to emergency access? No. How do I keep this thing usable as an emergency access point without creating basically the tacit approval to make it a public right-of-way? I put the gates up. Are we going to allow pedestrian and bicycle traffic through there? Yes. Will we allow car traffic through there? No. That's what we have to do. So if we're looking at this from my professional point of view, and by the way I look at it as a liability for the city in this particular case, when it comes to my review of projects where I have the ability to correct something like this, I have to put my stamp down and say, okay, I have to do this. It's not a question of can I massage this to make it work. There is no massaging on this one. It puts the city at a great liability.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in and just kind of stress that we talked about this a lot. You know, we spent a lot of time kind of, well, are there other options? Because this was not proposed by the applicant. They, I think they heard at the neighborhood meeting, we want to keep this open. They wanted to accommodate that request, and they proposed that. This is coming from the city from a safety standpoint, and we really wrestled with that. With, you know, like, could we do a variance? Can they get a design modification? And at the end of the day, after a lot of discussion and looking at different angles, you know, Bob's absolutely right that the consensus was it's not something that we would be able to approve if this was if someone was proposing this today, we wouldn't be able to approve it. And so we really needed to fix a situation that really shouldn't have been going on for the past 15 years.
So just to clarify, because, I mean, you guys have been vetted in this project for a really long time, and so someone hearing it from the first time, some of the things that you're saying that road should have never been used. And so what happened in 2003 is
The gate
that
wasn't put up.
the gate was not put up. When the developer finished the project in 2003, they were obligated to put up a gate to have no traffic go through, which they did not. So they allowed an continuing use of a stub street that should not have been continued. The other part in looking at this is that Madera Lane, and the way you said it, and I don't want to gloss over it, was when we look at these applications, when they're coming through to us, you have to be able to provide access to each lot as they develop. And so when the Madera project was brought in, that emergency access was put in the anticipation that Madera Lane would provide access to the middle lot, so that the middle lot would not have direct access to Edie and go all the way through. And that is very similar to how what is a stub street now will be pedestrian access. So the stub street that we are vacating to not make a connection through was built for the same reason that Madera was configured the way it was to provide continuing access to these three to take the access from either Highway 99 or direct access to Edie to put them on a smaller street instead. So when Madera Terrace was put in, the thought was to provide a stub street access so that the Driftwood Mobile Home Park, if it redeveloped, would go through onto the Madera Lane. Well, that's not going to happen, so that's being abandoned, so that cut-through traffic is not going to occur at all. That's going to be a pedestrian access only, and the temporary access that should have been gated in 2003 is being eliminated because the center parcel doesn't need access from Madera anymore. It's not, that parcel is not going to go through Madera. That parcel is now going to go through Borchers. Is that?
When you say the center parcel, you're referring to the Driftwood Mobile Home
No,
site?
the one next to
Oh, yes.
Providence. So there's three. When Madera came through, in 2003, there were three separate parcels that the city was obligated to provide access to. And knowing ODOT doesn't want access directly onto 99, there were stubs and accommodations made to connect to the Madera Lane side of it or to Borchers. And as this project is developing into one, they have one combined driveway on this side. The stub street is being abandoned, so there will not be cut-through traffic from Madera into the commercial or vice versa.
Right, and I think what Bob was saying is, it is very likely that a prior TSP envisioned Madera kind of going across that property, curving, and probably coming in where Borchers is. And essentially you'd have that traffic. And that's no longer the case, nor warranted or desired, I think, in terms of that amount of traffic going to Madera. And really what we're, again, talking about is putting in what was condition, what should have been put in with the subdivision, and for whatever reason didn't get, I believe the condition, I'm not positive, but I believe there was even a condition that there be a gate there, and it didn't get put in.
Yes, and it's all predicated, the way they developed this whole concept, if you look at the plans, look at the notice of decision, it was a temporary access easement. That's not public right-of-way. It wasn't intended to be public right-of-way ever. They basically didn't meet the design requirements for a road section at all, other than here's paved surface, here's some drainage to take care of it, and it's in a temporary access easement strictly that runs long-term for access to comply with a fire requirement, emergency access for Madera, so it could comply with that requirement. That requirement is still being met with the current site development. The gate makes sure that it is not going to be used as a public, in this case, transportation access, extenuation, or continuation as a road, public road. Doesn't meet the standards. It's not what it's intent for. but it still can be used for pedestrian traffic, bicycles. That is not an issue.
And I want to, again, stress, because we did go around and around and really made Bob defend, we're like, well, what, it's already there, can't you just keep it there, keep the gate not there? And he really pointed out the safety issues, the long-term, there will continue to be traffic in this area, and there will continue to be more traffic in this area. And so even though people probably can get in and out now, and they may not have had, major accident issues or anything like that, that's not, again, it's not something that we would approve today. It's not something that's safe today, and it's certainly not something that will be safe long-term.
Would we as a city be able to implement speed humps through Houston Drive?
I think we can, I think we need to think about that.
Okay.
And my guess is that you're.
I know there's pros and cons to that, but understanding that residents' primary concern is, the amount of traffic going through and traffic calming and, at minimum, reducing the amount of speed that traffic is going through that area. Because I do understand the issues with the proximity of those two intersections, how close they are together, and hearing Mr. Galati's explanation regarding the issues, it makes sense, but just trying to think.
And we don't generally support speed bumps in the city, traffic bumps, certainly traffic calming of some sort maybe. And one of the things why I kind of was hesitating and looking at Bob is I don't know how much it's their problem. We're saying you need to put a gate where a gate was originally conditioned. They're not, while this project in going forward is making the gate come up because we're aware of the issue, I don't know that solving an existing problem that really should have been there for 15 years is their responsibility.
Do the citizens have a path by which they can approach the city separately and ask for a traffic calming measure?
Yeah, and I knew that it's not a clear path, and
You knew I was going there.
Yeah, so I think we need to come back with a good answer or a better answer.
If I might, technically, there are designs out there for speed cushions that work. So it's a technical issue that can be solved. But we don't have a policy process in place as to what warrants it, how do we do it, what pays for it, long-term maintenance costs, all those issues that have not been discussed at this point in time. Currently, our policy is we just haven't gotten around to it, so we say something else other than. So can we do something that comes out and says, not particularly towards this developer, because this is off-site and it's not relative to them and their impacts. This is internal to the development and the development's desires for controlling that. There are other items that we could possibly look at that are acceptable to the city, that don't need review and policy statements and processes and agreements. We got all that already, but that is something that I'm not sure that we can put upon this developer. But it's something that could be approached.
Understood.
Outside of this.
Absolutely. And I would just like to say that in general, I'm not a big proponent of that solution of speed cushions or speed bumps. But with the way that this development is laid out with its singular in and out, because my concern usually with speed bumps is that it just forces traffic onto an alternative route. Since there's no other alternative route, people would essentially have to more comply to the speed limits. But I understand what you're saying about not having an existing policy, but if we could look at what traffic calming possibilities there might be for that because of the closure from Madeira Terrace, I think that would be beneficial. And
I think that's doable.
Yeah.
I also, from my perspective, I look at traffic calming devices on streets that are tended to be used as through streets. not for the local residents who live across the street from,
The guy that's speeding.
from the guy who's speeding. It's a
Right.
local
Absolutely.
issue.
Yeah.
If it was a through traffic, Lindley is a prime example of a cut-through
Yep.
street where I go, there's something that maybe we need to discuss.
Yeah.
Lavender's another cut-through street. Any of those type of things, Copper Terrace, cut-through street, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole lot of those that could possibly be identified and dealt with calming processes. What we don't want is every street, every local street, even if it's on a dead-end street, having a speed cushion put in because one person on that street chooses to not conduct themselves in a way that is acceptable to our standard driving habits. What we want to do is, how can we help this person realize that he lives in a community and that safety is part of a community goal, and we would like him to adjust his driving behavior to match that goal so that the community doesn't have to spend its money on something for one person, rather than being able to say, okay, we want to spend it on something else that does the whole community good.
So
So that's my take on it.
So we have tried to beat this horse until it's dead on Madera Terrace, and you guys as a staff really tried to take into consideration the citizens' concerns, but having to comply with the safety standards of Edie Road itself and the actual application that was approved in 2003. I'd like to just ask one more time, is there any other solution that would let itself to having a gate? Because I would like to say this off-site mitigation is not the applicant, it's not what's not what we're here to make a decision on tonight. The gate is, it's either yes, you have to do it, or this is the only option. And if that's the only option.
Technically, I won't sign off on any other option.
So
As a
that-
city engineer, I won't
Okay.
sign off on another option that will allow traffic to go through that segment, residential traffic.
So as the city engineer, we need to
and I-
understand that's how it's gonna be, and now we can focus our energies on the application, the buildings, Edie Road, Highway 99, and the applicant's, testimony in front of us.
And I sympathize, because like I said,
Yeah.
we knew this was going to be an issue. We heard that that was a concern. And Connie and I pushed Bob quite a bit, as did, we talked with our city manager even about, like, what do you think about this? And he convinced us that this is really the best technical option, and there really isn't anything else that would allow us to, with a straight face and legitimate conscience.
Think we're not creating a greater hazard.
Right.
Yeah, so, yes, thank you. And so as a commission, I think we can say that the gate is what it has to be, so we can focus on the other items. I don't know, I would like to take a 5-minute break before we call the applicant back up for rebuttal. Please?
Sure.
Thank you.
there's not 335 feet with the cars parked there. You can't see maybe 50.
Bob's right for talk to you about that. He's our city engineer. And he's
But
the one
they've put parking right here and right here. It's insanity.
You're saying they should put up maybe some no parking signs.
There has to be, because when I come home from work, I live right here. I cross this road, and I can't see. I have to nose out, probably half a car length, and then go for it.
We're live.
Okay, we are going to call to order again the hearing. So we had just completed taking citizen testimony and discussing the gate. We have an opportunity for the applicant to come back for the rebuttal. They have 12 minutes left. Yes, 12 minutes and 11 seconds or something like that. So,
rebuttal on just the gate.
no, rebuttal on everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everything, all the notes.
Okay.
Everything, and I guess that is a question of the commission of where do we go from here, so. All right, so applicant rebuttal.
So again, Eric Adams with Mackenzie. Joining me is Jennifer Danziger, who's our transportation engineering consultant, also with Mackenzie. We'd like to respond to some of the points of testimony regarding the transportation improvements along the highway as well as at the intersection of Edie and Borchers.
Okay. So I wanted to hit on a couple things. Big picture first. The first is that we analyzed the whole study area initially with the right-in, right-out approach, but we also looked at 3 access scenarios specific to the site, the right-in, right-out, the right-in only, and then we also looked at a no-access scenario just in case ODOT said you can't have anything. That one's off the table completely. Right now we're moving forward with the right-in. That scenario does meet the city standards or the state standards at all of the intersections. So it's in the TSP as documented, and it works for everything. And when we looked at our mitigation, that mitigation works for both the right-in, right-out, as well as the right-in only scenario.
So if I were to go to your transportation document, which I,
This gigantic thing here.
It's right here.
oh, is that mine?
No, this one, I think it's
Oh,
mine.
wait, I found it.
It's okay.
There's a lot of paperwork
Just,
here.
I'm sorry, just for the public and the record, when you ask questions of the applicant, we turn the clock off. Just,
Yes.
I just want to make that clear so they don't go, "Well, how come they're getting?"
How come they get way more time than anticipated? Where in this document does it say write-in only doesn't cause failure on Edie Road?
Okay, I'm looking to see. Okay, so there's a section that refers to the alternative access scenarios. It begins on page 30. And then there's 2 tables, 9 and 10, which look at the access
Okay, so
there.
there's 2 page numbers. There's a little page number and then there's.
Oh, I'm sorry, you know what, I have the standalone and you have it. It's the, so it's table 9.
It's the
and
little number?
And
so little number what?
Page 31. And
Table
it's
9?
Table 9 in page 31.
Sorry, that'll come up about 100 more times because the staff report
That's
does the
okay, and
same
I'm looking
thing.
at the standalone, not the one that has the little numbering on it.
Okay, so table 9,
Table
peak hour
9.
intersection, okay.
Right, peak hour intersections for alternative access scenarios. So there's 3 scenarios that
Oh,
you
I
can
see
see in the heading that says right in, right out, right in only, no access. And then it looks at the second one down, the shaded one is the Highway 99 scenario. And you can see that it actually doesn't really change. There's a little more delay, but the overall BC ratio doesn't change, and that's the standard that's based on it for the right-in only versus the right-in, right-out. It does have a little more traffic coming there, but that traffic is all making right turns in essence, because that's what they would be doing if they were coming out of the site. They're coming out at onto Edie and then turning right south onto 99W, which is what they would be doing.
I think the concern is more the intersection at Edie and Borchers.
Right.
And the left turn, isn't that the top line?
That's the top one, and this is unmitigated. So then you go to
So just in the unmitigated on table 9, it says
It's
that,
over capacity.
that one,
That's that big black bold says it's over capacity with all of those scenarios. We need to do something about that. And so this was, table 9 is without any of the improvements that we're talking about. At
the intersection, so
So without the
it's-
signal, that's with the stop sign as it is now, no signal, no lane
no ability to
changes.
turn left from
Right,
Borchers
so it's
onto
very
Edie.
difficult. In fact,
Right.
that's what it's saying. It says there's no ability to turn left.
Okay.
And then there's a section, the mitigation and recommendation section, then goes and discusses the traffic signal, and actually, again, looks at those 3 scenarios with the traffic signal at Borchers, and how they work with and without the signal.
And where's
is
that?
proposed. Table 12.
All right.
So, I'd just like to understand, so is table 9 under the second, the signalized row, looking at right in / right out and then right in only, I see the same numbers there. Is that saying that that intersection is the same regardless of
The way we,
option?
yeah, it's actually not changing the overall, that number, the VC ratio, is that comparison of demand versus capacity. It's not changing it when you look at all the demand going through the intersection. It's not changing it in
So-
a measurable way.
Only the intersection at Highway 99 and Edie.
Yes.
That's this signalized intersection.
This is just 99 and Edie,
This-
so not,
thi-
okay.
And this one says that Edie and Borchers goes from,
It does get worse because there's
so
more
if
competing
it's just,
traffic.
if it's right in, right out, just barely fails, right in only, it fails worse, and if there's no access on Highway 99, they are 2 times failure.
Yeah,
Okay. And then the other one is Highway 99 at site access. Okay, got it.
right. So what we looked
Does
at
that
there
answer the
was the
question?
3
Wait a second.
points.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would, I understand these are technical studies
Right.
and everything that goes into them and everything like
Uh-huh.
that. Personally, I'm skeptical to believe that forcing assuming that this development would be as successful as we all would like it to be, forcing all exiting traffic out through one intersection compared to having 2 points for traffic to be able to go, and understanding that with the right in, right out option, you have a significant portion of that traffic that would want to go that direction, easing the amount of traffic going out onto Borchers and through the Edie Road 99 access. Just in my own personal experience, I'm skeptical to believe that not having the right in, right out essentially leaves it the same one way or the other.
It's 20 or 25% of the exiting traffic gets rerouted through that intersection, and because it's basically adding to a movement that isn't the problem movement, and that's one of the reasons why it's just not showing up as, it's going to make it, the delays are going to be longer, so if you look at the measurements, you'll see that the VC ratio is the same, but there will be some more delay, so it's not no impact.
So, but is that saying, is that assuming that, I do believe that the signal at Edie and Borchers will be a huge benefit to
Right.
that intersection?
Mm-hmm.
Is that assuming that the Edie and Borchers and Edie and 99 are optimally synchronized? And because as it stands right now,
Right.
the amount of traffic that's coming through, as many residents
Mhm.
have attested to and
Right.
and I've dealt with on my own, oftentimes I will go another route than Borchers because I know that there will be a huge backup
Right.
coming out through that way. I do believe that a signal will be hugely beneficial, but I find it hard to believe that just that signal alone compared to, I would imagine that the right in, right out option with the essentially on-ramp onto 99 would be most optimal, so.
It would be the optimal choice, yes, but, as I said, the other still meets standard. Not the optimal choice, but that requires, because of the location of that merge lane and the concerns that traffic coming out while people are driving in that lane, looking over their shoulder to merge, there's a real potential for a pretty severe crash there. And so ODOT said, unless you can get rid of that merge lane, which requires building almost a quarter mile of new travel lane on the highway, it's, that they can't permit it. And so,
So the applicant's not willing to put that quarter mile to Cedar Brook in.
But ODOT has approved that,
They have.
the extension to Cedar Brook, correct?
they've said that they would accept a write-out if the third lane goes down to Cedar Brook.
So maybe we should discuss what, from a constructability standpoint, what that means. Is extending the third lane all the way down to Cedar Brook means widening the crossing at the creek, further impacting that riparian corridor, the wetlands associated with it, fairly substantial in terms of grading and filling within that area to bridge over that existing riparian corridor that is protected by the city in terms of its natural resources. On balance, again, given the performance metrics for the intersection at Edie and Borchers with just a right in, as we demonstrated in the analysis, it's our perspective that that choice of a right in only is, in terms of balancing the city's goals for land use development, a better path. The other thing to keep in mind too is that in terms of traffic flow through that intersection, and as it queues up through to the intersection at the highway, that queuing is largely going to be internalized within the site, right? It's not going to be as though it's backing up and putting more traffic out onto Edie to increase the queue going westbound as well. And then the last thing to point out is that although Edie is for all intents and purposes a city street in terms of its design standards, from the intersection at Borchers to the intersection at the highway, as is made clear in the testimony from ODOT, it's under their jurisdiction. They get to dictate what does and doesn't happen at that intersection, and all the way from Edie and Borchers to the highway. There's some very interesting history that staff could probably provide as to how that came to be.
So, I understand that the right in, right out, and the approach that the developer would like to take. I understand that there's a cost-benefit ratio that's coming into consideration. Just curious as to, how much backup happens within the site as a result of that. While it's in one form, it might be good that it's not on that collector road, but I believe that there's a negative impact if there is significant buildup within the site, especially given the importance of the type of services that are provided at the site between Providence Medical Center, along with the proposed memory care and things like that. So.
As far as the signal, you had asked about the signal timing and signal phasing. We're looking at options for that right now and working with ODOT to see what they would consider their optimal choice on the timing and the phasing of that. Looking at potentially restriping to increase some of the queue storage on Borchers, not re-widening the road, but seeing if we can just use it better. And then as Eric explained in his presentation, trying to add some more capacity and accessibility on Edie Road by having the 2 through lanes. What we aren't addressing, and it's very correctly identified, at the key or the critical point in that eastbound direction is the through movement, and there is no way to get more through traffic across the highway because we meet the standard there, and it's a congested standard. I'm not going to pretend it's
You're
not.
talking about from Edie crossing 99.
Yes.
And so, I understand that because
Right.
if there were to be widening at the intersection, you'd essentially either have bottlenecks further down the road, unless those further roads were
Right.
likewise widened.
And the city plans do show, you know, improvements that include addressing the long-term capacity of that intersection. And it's a lot of improvements, well beyond what would be needed to address our mitigation or our impacts. Those are existing issues.
Yeah, so perspective, I know it's in this document, and had I had 3 more weeks to read everything in here, how many trips cross Edie, or Edie across Highway 99, just so I can get perspective to say
Okay.
PM peaks on Edie across Highway 99?
I'm flipping.
I know, and I'm sorry to throw
No, that's
that at
okay.
you.
That's okay. I know it quite well.
It's to put in perspective to say, you guys are impacting us by
Right,
300
right.
trips PM, but there are,
It's 47
47,
trips going.
how many background trips? Yeah, how many?
Oh, okay, hold on. So 47 added, and with the total, it is 266.
So you're adding up 20%.
Yeah.
That's quick math.
Okay.
Okay, just trying to put perspective in to
Yeah.
say.
No, I mean, it is adding some.
It's adding some, and that's why you're required to put in the light, because that's your mitigation, and that's the cost of you having to impact the road system at that level.
Right, right. Putting in the light, there's some widening that will occur on the section in between to try and improve accessibility to the other lanes that are being used, because we can't add another through lane at this point, but we
Okay.
can try and improve accessibility for the other lanes trying to get to.
Can we get 2 left turn lanes from Borchers onto Edie to, or will the signal resolve it differently?
The signal will improve it a lot in terms of the ease of turning left. It will create essentially a sharing system in which different movements get to come out and use that road. So the left turn from Borchers will be much easier. One other thing I'd like to point out is that's important to the analysis is that this assumes the improvements on 12th and Sherwood Road and Roy Rogers. They're funded improvements. They've been held up, but they are going to occur. And we worked with the city's on-call traffic engineer to identify specifically what the expectation on how that project would affect this area. And the expectation is it would pull some of, right now people are avoiding 12th and Sherwood Road because it's so bad and coming down here, and the expectation is that that project would provide some relief. So that is captured in this analysis. It's not necessarily, it's in different layers of the analysis, but that is in there, and that's something important just to point out.
Yeah, I did have it noted in here because we were part of a briefing that, and I don't know, Julia was there, where Washington County came out and gave us a brief update of the 12th and Sherwood Road improvement going to 5 lanes and the timing of that, because that is triggered on the Roy Rogers expansion, the putting in of that huge pipe that's going from Wilsonville all the way up to Hillsborough, isn't it? So that pipeline project will be going through at the same time that they're doing it, and that it was expected to start in 2020 or 2022, something like that.
I think it's actually on track to start sooner than that. I think they're hoping to bid it by 2018 is last.
Right,
I
but
heard.
that's the west side of Highway 99. I've been keenly I'm trying to track, because 5 lanes from all the way to Teton, that's not gonna be till 2020.
Right.
That's a different,
But
that's an
that's-
extension of the one that we're talking about goes from Borchers down to Langer Farms Parkway, which is connected into and will be a part of the pipeline project. That's one project. Because of the pipeline project, they had to extend that project as a second phase down to 124th to pick it up, including Teton.
Nice.
So there's 2 projects that we're dealing with, 2 separate funded projects, my understanding. The one project for the roadway is from Langer Farms Parkway to Borchers.
And
that's
that's
the one that will-
2018.
That's 2018, but that includes the water line going through.
Okay.
So it's convoluted, but the water line really, they need to get that thing, they want that thing in as quickly as possible. And the road project, we have plans, they have plans already for the section from Langer to Borchers. What they're trying to pick up is that section from Langer to Teton.
Right, and I think citizens, I mean, some of us that have been part of these meetings kind of knew what was going on, but citizens hearing this for the first time going, 12th and Sherwood Road's been quote-unquote a pipe dream for years, and now it's actually going to be something because of another project that is, they are going to put 5 lanes in, and it is going to happen starting 2018, and this project's expected completion date is 2018, so you guys are gonna be completing your project at the same time. Hopefully, relief will be held by traffic by the intersection of 12th and Sherwood Road and Highway 99.
Right.
Orchards to Langer Farms will be improved. In the perfect world, the timing works out great.
It does, and because that one's been held up, it's been a little bit more awkward, but it is included and embedded in this improvement, so you will see those, there is an expectation that some of the traffic that shifted down to Edie and Sherwood will move back up with the improvements up there when they can move through more easily.
Okay, so all those factors in play, and then in the perfect world, you put in a signalized intersection, post-mitigation. Table 12 tells us that we have intersections that are functioning better than they are currently.
Yes, it should actually function better than it does currently there. It will be congested during the evening peak hour because it is congested everywhere during the evening peak hour. But especially during the rest of the day, it will be vastly improved over what it is right now. I mean, it's supposed to be an issue in the morning. It'll go to relatively short delays in the morning. And as I said, we're working with the state to figure out what they want because they are the approving agency on that signal, as to what they're looking for signal timing, how it's going to be. Is it going to be part of the coordinated system? Is it going to run separately? We're working on what those preferences might be.
Just curious, so would a write-in, write-out option, would it end this project for the developer? I mean, is that essentially, would that be a make or break issue?
Guy behind you's nodding
The cost of the improvement, as I mentioned before, is significant. And it very much changes the calculus of this project to the point of likely, yes, calling it into question as to whether it would move forward for a variety of different reasons. The construction costs, the permitting timelines, the additional review processes, all of those add multiple layers of uncertainty and time and delay that, again, in comparison to the benefits that we see that would still be delivered through a signal at Edie and Borchers, it is, quite frankly, just the path of least resistance at this point, and it still maintains consistency with the city's TSP, with the mobility standards that ODOT specifies. I think it bears mentioning that, as we discovered through this process, I think we were surprised as much as city staff that ODOT's jurisdiction comes all the way back to the intersection at Borchers and Edie. Their focus is mobility along the highway. If that results in additional congestion on side streets, so be it. I mean, they're concerned about travel and freight movement along their facilities, first and foremost.
Which I understand. However, I believe it's important for us as this commission to take into consideration resident concerns on those additional side streets. And my final thought on that is just I can't think of a single successful shopping center that has just a single exit access point, and that's what is a significant concern to me, so.
Understandable, and I think that's a fair point to make. Overall, the potential and prospective tenants for this project are aware of that situation. We haven't heard that they are pulling out at this point. I mean, I think that the market is strong in Sherwood and the surrounding region. It's a factor that obviously the applicants have had to consider, and we're still moving forward with the project. So that should give you confidence in whether or not the project will be successful.
Thank you.
All right, that was a lot of traffic questions. So, all right, so sorry to.
So we're starting the clock again and allowing them to continue rebutting, is that?
Could continue to rebut. One question at a time.
Well, actually, I would say your questions kind of let me cover most of my rebuttal. I would mention, I think I mentioned, the signal porchers will redistribute some of the traffic, give people more of an option, help with the left turn significantly. We're looking at possibly reusing porchers better, seeing if we can extend the striping so that there's more storage for both movements. It's kind of a funny configuration, but we're going to look into that. And the other thing I wanted to make as a point is with the right in, there is a deceleration lane on the highway. Someone had raised the issue of it's not quite meeting ODOT's standards. It's sort of the best location for the site, for the spacing, and one of the things that we're doing that's helped reduce that concern is also that because we have a right turn deceleration lane in that's separating the traffic, that's slowing down to turn into the site. So I just wanted to mention that that's one of sort of the mitigation. It's not really a mitigation in there, it was assumed in our design, but it's part of mitigating that access location. That we think is essential for us.
Has the drive-through restaurant been taken into consideration? It's close to that entry point from 99. If there's significant backup from a drive-through, is there potential for that to create a backup onto 99?
So just so I understand your question correctly, so you're envisioning a scenario where enough vehicles are in the drive-through for the restaurant that the queue would essentially be long enough to snake back out onto the deceleration right turn lane off of the highway. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if we specifically looked at volumes of vehicles generated by the drive-through restaurant use, did we?
Not in terms
More
of
of
how
the
they
shopping
would,
center as a whole.
back out from the drive-through window.
Yeah.
But I think in that scenario, you have
You have ways that they could route the.
there's additional storage capacity within the shopping center itself.
Okay. Okay.
And that would need to be actively managed were that to come about. I think you also, in that scenario, you have traffic safety violation issues that could be enforced through other means. But again, that's something that could be actively managed.
Right. And I'd also add with the right out, as I said, it's only about 25% of the traffic that's affected because it's just a right out. It's not a full access. It never was with the median. So the only people that could ever use the right out were the people that were heading southbound, essentially exiting. From the right in, it's also, it's more because people can turn left from Sherwood or come southbound. So it's a little bit higher percentage. It's about 40%, but it's still a lot of the traffic is using the main entrance into the site as well. So.
All right.
I have a follow-up question about uses. At least our copy of the plans dated February 10th, Building C is listed as retail, and I think in your presentation you had, it seemed like, well, that obviously has a drive-up because that's one that needs the variance. So is your intent, is that's going to be a drive-through restaurant as well as Building D?
So building C does have a potential for a drive-through component, as well as a part of that overall building could be strictly retail. It could be split between those two uses.
So it could be retail, could be
Retail
fast food,
and,
could
and
be.
drive-through, or just drive-through. And then building D was factored in as a drive-through restaurant only.
And E would be some kind of a sit-down restaurant or a walk-in or.
Correct. And then building F is
Retail.
Multi-tenant retail.
So potentially building C's a bank with a drive-through or something, you don't know.
Yeah, well, probably not a bank. Maybe another type of drive-through restaurant. Or it could be a Starbucks, and then the other
That's
half
what
of
we
that.
need,
We
is
need
another.
one more.
We don't have enough, I'm sure.
Sure.
Another Starbucks.
Pick your favorite, I don't know, what.
So it could potentially be
Two fast food restaurants next to each other.
potentially.
Conceivably, yes.
And does that, so I'm turning, staff, can they do that with the parking that they have and the building permits and all the way that works? I mean, if we approve something that says retail, restaurant, retail, and they come in for a building, or a business license, and it becomes 3 restaurants, is that in violation of anything that we're approving today?
We review all tenant improvements, so we would be reviewing the building plan. They have to come in for final site plan. There's conditions of final site plan. And not only final site plan, but when they actually come to build the building permits, planning would sign off on that. So if there was a different use than what was proposed at the time, we would take a look at the calculations and see, do they still meet parking standards? They have a surplus of parking from what the minimum is now, so there is a potential to add additional uses there that require more parking and to change that configuration to do that. So we would just be managing that as we review that. There's possible, we haven't specifically calculated to see if it was all restaurant, would it not, but we would do that before we would allow them to build anything.
Okay.
And your building permit process calculates parking and trips. Is there a trip maximum?
We don't.
Vehicle trip, we don't do the
No.
cap anymore, so
No,
we don't do
Right,
that.
that's right, yeah.
We don't have the cap. We would be looking at, are they meeting their on-site parking?
Okay.
And again, when they did their trips and stuff, they also accounted for that hotel use. So they have overanalyzed what they're proposing to you now. They will still have to come back if they want to develop that hotel. And my guess is the size of it would trigger it to be a type 4 application, which would come before Planning Commission, and you could reevaluate how it has developed and what's going on and all those assumptions again.
So, but our code allows the developer to have flexibility, say if the potential occupants that they're seeing are shifting more towards restaurant or food service, they have that ability to do that as long as the parking and other parameters fall in line.
They have that ability because our commercial allows for a wide variety of commercial uses that are permitted.
Yep.
And so it does give them flexibility, but we also hold them to standards that they are still meeting their parking standards, so that we're not saying, you've parked it and planned it and came to Planning Commission with the lowest possible parking use, and then you come in and get building permits for the highest possible, and we're not gonna call you on it? No, we're gonna call you on it, and we're gonna say, no, we tell people that in pre-apps, whatever type it is, it's like, be sure that these are the uses you want, because you're tight and you're not gonna be allowed at tenant improvements to do something different than that. So I have less concern with this because there is, they've overparked. They stayed under our maximum, so they didn't go over the maximum and trigger that. They did not take advantage of any of the parking, the shared parking calculations, which would allow them to reduce the required parking. They haven't gotten into that. So I have fewer concerns in this particular instance than I have in other projects that we have seen come through the pre-application process.
Okay.
And I can confirm, just to add on to that, that we did look at multiple parking scenarios with multiple mixtures of uses, including having the entirety of building C exclusively as drive-through, and the parking supply that we have is adequate to compensate for that.
Okay.
And I'll also just chime in, just for clarification, that this is a shopping center, so there's going to be assumed that there's going to be a little bit of flexibility in uses. If they were to propose a office complex and then build a restaurant villa, that would be a different, that would be a different issue than if they're building a shopping complex and have some tweaking of uses, maybe, based on the buildings that they showed. So that, I just want to make sure that
Yes.
more for the public, that they understand that it's not just get approval for one thing and build something else. There are reviews, but in this instance, it's a shopping center, and so
Tenants
we
will
understand that
change.
they don't necessarily know exactly who's going to be where.
Right, right.
Just to throw it back one step. Again, we're looking at this from a traffic impact analysis initially. And what they proposed is high use, high turnover of, transportation. If they were coming in saying, we want general office, and they came back in later and said, oh, we want to put in restaurants, we want a drive-through, we want this, that, and the other thing, the show would stop and I'd say, oh, by the way, now you got to do a TIA based on the higher thing. And you're going to have to show me how that works. So in that respect, they're working it such that whatever they put in there, it has to work because the mitigation requirements that they're stuck with right now, they don't want to come back and redo these things.
All right. All right, any other rebuttal to the citizen testimony before we go into other questions or concerns from the Planning Commission? Okay, so, I don't know how, Planning Commission, you ready for questions to the applicant about the thing, about concerns, questions, comments? Do you want to continue it to a date certain to read all this condition information to absorb everything? The applicant is here, so one of my first questions before I start going is, have you had an opportunity to review all the revised conditions of approval, and are you in agreement with all of them? Or,
No, we have not had ample time to review all the conditions of approval. The new ones that were issued today, yeah.
moments?
But-
Yes. So
We can go through them one by one if you'd like to.
tonight? Or did you want to request a continuance, or
Hang on.
we can confer quietly?
I know.
We're just talking about his copier.
Yeah, right. Well, you guys wouldn't have had.
Oh, that's right, because you ever shut up? Right. We're talking about non-PC stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to ask them to fix that.
Because I've noticed that it's done that for the last few meetings.
Oh, I didn't
Probably
notice.
longer.
Who's on that?
Yeah.
If we get a ladder, I can try.
I'm gonna send emails public works.
Can you copy me?
I think we're okay with the changes to the conditions.
As staff has drafted them? Wow. You've had more time to
How
read
do
them
you
than
feel
I have.
about 'em?
That I haven't had a
How
chance
do
to
you
read.
feel?
That I have not had a chance to read them to the level that I would feel comfortable. I would like to ask the rest of the commission how their I know that there's questions and concerns that I have regarding approval of the application and things that I would like to put out as questions for you and for staff on how the approval process would continue. And concerns I have of whether or not standards have been met. So that's, I'm looking at the rest of the commission to say, you wanna forge forward? I'm ready to forge forward with questions, concerns, statements.
I am. I think the way Matt explained this document,
Mhm.
and as I looked through it, I mean, everything seemed to match up nicely. So there's nothing in there that I don't understand.
Okay, and I understand that too.
I read Chadley's comments, although she indicated she has already revised, but she's going to insert that later. So I'm okay if we move forward.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to give feedback on what we have received and been able to look at. However, I personally believe a continuance would probably be beneficial.
All right, so we've got mixed consensus here, so we'll go forward and lay out on the table what our concerns are and see if they are resolvable this evening. So, Russell, do you have?
You want me to start?
We'll start with Russell.
I've done a lot of talking already, so.
I think most of, well, some of my concerns with the application were, I mean, we can't really do anything about the gate now that Bob has fully explained that, and that's really outside of your purview anyway. There's really nothing we can do about that. That's not something you caused. The city should have caught that 12 years ago and forced the developer to put the gate up, and we didn't. So it is what it is.
That's what we're doing.
It's going to happen now. So, as I reviewed the application, you know, the building profiles and the views and whatnot, I think one of my concerns, and Matt alluded to this, and I share the same concern, is I'm not crazy about the backs of those buildings. I'm not crazy about the ones that face the back up to 99. I know that there's going to be heavy vegetation, but heavy vegetation grows slowly. And so day one, we're gonna have all this cinder block going across the back. There's no articulation on a lot of the backside of some of those buildings. The backside of the health facility that faces the people who live on Madera Court, you know, the backside of the retail building that faces the care center. I don't know if I'm okay. I'm probably okay with that. I'm more concerned about the public right-of-way and people driving down 99 and looking over and seeing the backside of those. That's one of my major concerns. I like the fronts a lot.
And so my statement is, and this is where I don't believe you've met the criteria, is that this community recently went through a town center plan, and that town center plan required the Six Corners area, which is that corner that you're at right now and the corner that's up by Safeway, to meet pedestrian grade standards for what our community looked like. And we recently did was it apartments or whatever down behind where Albertsons used to be, and those requirements, as it relates to your assisted living facility, required that the pedestrian scale be scaled towards our community and towards the street. And they made a connection from the building to the street by putting amenities, street furniture, and connections. You put an entrance on that side, but that wall that is facing our community is a very long wall without a lot of articulation. And more egregiously is the commercial buildings that face Highway 99. They are, in my opinion, not meeting the code when it says that it will be pedestrian scaled and front facing our community. All your pictures are facing the parking lot. And so that, I just don't know how you can meet it. You said 20% glazing towards the street, but are you saying there's 20% of fantastic articulation and something that looks beautiful to our community on Highway 99 and Edie Road, or to the parking lot that is your front door?
So the 20% glazing standard for the retail portion of the project is with respect to street-facing elevations.
Mm-hmm.
So on those street-facing elevations that are visible from a street,
Mm-hmm.
not on the street, but visible from a street, the project complies with that. Certainly along the frontage of the senior housing, senior assisted living building, and in total through the retail buildings as well. That's what our calculations do demonstrate and have established. My recollection of the code language is, with respect to building orientation, is that it be oriented towards the pedestrian. And in coordinating with staff, I guess as a side note, the town center plan, to our knowledge, is not directly applicable to this site. It may have
Intent.
similarities or parallels, but in terms of its application to this property, it is not a set of criteria that we have to satisfy.
It's outside of the Six Corners area. I'm looking to staff to say that parcel is outside of the Six Corners area. That was our town center.
I would have to defer to Julia. Do you know the answer to that? Because
And I could be completely wrong. I've been known to be.
I'd have to look. I don't believe it went,
I don't know if it jumped 99.
included all of this area, but I would have to look. So I don't know.
And it could be that it doesn't extend that far, but it just feels wrong. It feels like the back of the building is facing our community.
So in terms of being
Sorry.
oriented towards the pedestrian, as I had highlighted during our initial presentation, you have an extensive network of interconnected pathways within the project that connect to public sidewalks both along Edie and Highway 99 that will provide for pedestrian circulation into the site and between those various buildings. So from our standpoint, that is being oriented toward the pedestrian, in that you can safely travel from the public sidewalk to the entrance of each of those buildings without having to frequently and regularly use a vehicular access way or a drive aisle or some other means to get from the public right-of-way to whatever building or use that you're traveling to. As far as the faces of the buildings that front along Highway 99, I appreciate what you're saying in terms of the back of house being that side of the project. And I'm not going to deny that that's the case. I mean, certainly the service side of those buildings, whether they be retail or restaurant, in comparison to the elevations that are internal to the site, looks very different. We do have a mixture of building materials along those elevations, however. There's a change in use in the color and patterning of those materials that do provide some visual articulation, even though from a dimensional standpoint, that might not be the case. And I think in our professional experience, there is a practical consideration that needs to be considered, in that vehicles traveling along Pacific Highway are moving at excess of 45 miles an hour, if not greater, as they pass by this site. The difference in comparison to, say, a collector street or a local street where traffic speeds are much slower, it's going to provide an opportunity for motorists to be able to look and see what the buildings look like, have a greater opportunity for identifying signage and so forth along those facades that tenants would want to invest in. It's not the same thing along a highway. It just isn't. And there are numerous projects that I've been associated with and that I've visited that have commercial buildings fronting on a highway or a high volume street that were required to have a storefront look to them, that eventually the tenants basically just boarded off, including doorways and windows. And so you end up with the same, if not worse, outcome because of a sort of shoddy treatment to that side of the building that wasn't originally intended. You're opening up an opportunity for people to put paint or drywall across windows, and it's not the look that you want. It really isn't.
Jump in too. My name's Terry Kraus. I'm an architect with McKinsey, and we're at 1515 Southeast Water Avenue, Suite 100, Portland, 97214. And I want to just kind of chime in and help with this discussion as well. I've been doing retail architecture for over 30 years, and part of our responsibility is also to make sure that we have a center that's viable, that's leasable, that's active, and having buildings that are literally small tenant buildings that are four-sided are not practical. They won't work. Tenants need back of house. They need service areas. They have a front door. They have security issues. They have theft issues. They can't have access and windows on all sides of their space. They need a front door and they need a back of house. And most retail buildings are designed that way, and they're designed that way for a reason, because there's a practical, functional aspect to what the tenants need and how they are going to perform, and they aren't going to lease buildings that don't work. The competition's fierce, and when you look at the buildings that are designed to accommodate tenants, they're full and they're active. And when you look at buildings that don't, they're boarded up, they're painted over, and having windows facing a 30-foot buffer on a state highway right-of-way is not retail design. It's not shopping center design. We're trying to articulate those buildings where to say cinder block is kind of a negative connotation. These are textured, colored, there's a lot of variety of the texture of the block, the color of the block, there's pilasters, cornices, all kinds of articulation of those block walls to break them up and make them more interesting than just the connotation of a cinder block wall. And when you look at other buildings, even the ones that's right there on the screen with Kohl's, the front of the building, the articulation is where the people are. It's where the front is. It's not articulated with windows on the highway side on the highway side.
The point that I think that I'm hearing from the commission is is there a way that we can just make the back of this, since it's street facing, more inviting, either through, and I'm not saying through windows or making them feel like a storefront necessarily, but I'm thinking potentially additional incorporation of some of the materials and color that are used on the front, bringing that around into the back, just so that it doesn't feel so much like the back of a building. Yeah.
There are buildings that have better backside articulation.
Well, here in Sherwood, we have Langer Farms Parkway.
Mhm.
If you look at Langer Farms Parkway, I mean, that's not Highway 99, it's Century Drive. But if you look at those buildings, they have interesting surfaces on all four of the sides. And yet there are still back doors on the back sides of those tenants, but it's a much better application of the concept. If you look at the Regal Cinema Plaza and those buildings and how they ended up on the edge of that road, Sherwood, 12th and Sherwood Road, that's not what we really want, because that is the back side of an ugly building. If you're in that plaza, I apologize. It's the back side of the building.
And that's a great example, too, between, seeing the success of Langer. I know Langer Farms is a newer development, but seeing, looking at the occupancy between the two shopping centers, I think, demonstrates the point that we're trying to articulate.
I mean, even putting on, like, trellis with more growing vines or something on the side of it, something that just breaks it up. It just looks like flat concrete.
So I just think it's interesting that all of us sort of identified that as a design element that we were not, I mean, even before Matt indicated when I was looking through these plans today on a big conference table, I was like, and then when he pointed that out, it was clear to see this is where the backside of this building faces. And I'm more concerned, not that the people in Madera Terrace don't need a nice facing back end, but I'm more concerned about the buildings that back up to 99. I don't want Sherwood to be, people race through Sherwood and just, you look either side and there's just these, I mean, it's 30 feet, I get that. There's gonna be vegetation, I get that, but I still think the backside of a building, it doesn't have to look like the storefront, but I think Langer Farms Parkway is a great example
of a success.
And adding adding on to what Commissioner Griffin is saying, I would like to add, mostly in relation to the memory care assisted living facility. When I look at that and I see the renderings, it doesn't strike me as something that I see as consistent with the character of Sherwood. I can definitely appreciate a modern aesthetic that has been sought out regarding it, but especially on Edie Road, I appreciate the articulation that is there, but it still looks like primarily one facade that has a large mass on that portion. And I believe in one of your slides, it showed different color treatment than what we received here, and the slide that you had, I felt had a better use of color potentially there. You know, just something not as bold or dark, but just something lighter and more natural. So.
And there were slight changes in the color composition between the packet of information that was submitted as part of the application in comparison to the slides that we showed as part of the presentation tonight. Mark Miller with Anchor Moyson, the architect on the project, might be able to speak further to the overall design and programming for the building in terms of why a continuous elevation is needed.
So I'm Mark Miller with Anchor Moyson Architects. Our address is, I have to remember we just moved, 38 Northwest Davis, Suite 300, Portland, Oregon. So, yeah, you are correct that, you know, there is kind of a large mass along Edie, but it's, when we're looking at senior housing, there are definite security and safety concerns for the residents. So it's essentially like an apartment building or a multifamily use, but we're really not able to do things like a townhome type of appearance because we have to, you know, we have resident safety, obviously is a concern, so you don't want people wandering out, especially on a road like Edie. You know, that's not good for anybody. So what we had attempted to do was to break up that facade, and I think Eric could probably, yeah. Oh, did we? Okay. Well, anyway, so the facade is obviously a fairly linear. We have, you know, quite a number of units that are internally facing to the building itself. But we've broken it up with massing or with color changes, you know, that material change, that sort of thing. You are correct. I think the original, we've gone through one material change to a lighter color. So it's brightened up a little bit. But again, the attempt was to actually break up that massing or that entire, you know, facade. So it's not one large, just window wall basically with no kind of relief to it. So, you know, there is kind of the massing that brings it down a little more to residential scale, not necessarily the appearance of the surrounding neighborhood, but it is of that sort of scale. And I think there was also that, in the design matrix, I believe there was also sort of a criteria for creating, you know, distinct buildings from the surroundings, I think, because it's not like the houses, right? I mean, it's not a single family residence. It's a different type of building. But it's also not, I mean, it's senior housing is always such an interesting kind of thing. It's not exactly residential, it's not exactly commercial, but it's really both, you know, the way it's treated. So I think creating this building as a kind of distinct piece helps to differentiate it from the fact that it's not exactly part of the residence. You know, we can't make it look like the rest of the residential. It's a totally different scale building. But it's not really a commercial kind of thing either. It's not retail. So trying to, sort of differentiate it from that. So not necessarily trying to create this thing as, we're not trying to mimic the fact that it's part of the residential neighborhood, but we're trying to bring the scale down a little bit to actually relate to that. Material choice, while it's not exactly what the rest of the residential areas have, it is a lot of, we have wood siding, we have other fiber cement, but as a lap look, so it's more residential in character. That type of thing. That was sort of the intent of what we were going with on this. I don't know if that really answers the question, but.
No, and I do understand that there's potentially different, there's obviously constraints with every site that it's dealt with architecturally. Other options or other projects that we've seen that speak more to what I'm thinking about, and at the same time, I don't want every development to look the same as one or another or anything like that. But the Springs facility that we recently had a hearing about did make better use of stepping back its overall structure to reduce that singular mass. And likewise, I know there's Arterra, which is another, I believe it's called Arterra. It's another senior development within Sherwood that in itself is large, but has more of a residential component characteristics to it. So, and that's those are the things I'm speaking of when it to me it just feels out of place in regards to the rest of Sherwood. Again, I'm only one part of this commission. If I'm the only one who feels that way, then throw it out. But I also would like to say that I know that we're giving you a lot of criticism or feedback. I believe that's our role as the planning commission. But I would like to say that at the same time, I do appreciate the thoughtfulness that has gone into the development up to this point, and overall, I do like a lot of what is going on and what is proposed. But just going back and forth, trying to make it the best project we can. So.
I don't know, the planting along that strip along Edie Road between the sidewalk and the building itself, I mean, in the renderings, it's all just flat grass. Is it going to be multi-level? Is it going to be, I mean, that would help break up that, because it's just flat to the building that accentuates the height of the 3 stories. But there'll be trees, see how flat that grass is right there?
Yeah, it doesn't provide.
I mean, I know that's not it. That's not the landscaping plan, but without, is there going to be some sort of, boxes, things that step up and break that up a little bit, or?
So, yeah, to speak to that, we did have sort of the landscape plan. I know the rendering didn't quite exactly show all the plantings. There are significantly more plantings involved. It's not just lawn. In terms of changes, I know there is a bit of a grade change that we weren't really showing in that rendering either, I think, just naturally.
What exhibit is that?
I'm sorry?
What exhibit is that?
In our application, it's sheet L1.0.
L?
Yep. And you'll see on there, it's.
Well, back here, there's one.
Which tab is it? We're looking at.
Well, there's landscaping on L.
Exhibit I. Yeah.
Oh, I.
L.
L1.0. And it shows a mixture of both medium canopy trees.
Oh, I see it.
Large and small shrubs, a mixture of different species, as well as turf grass.
Yep, I see that. I'm thinking of something taller, lower, out, in, more of a, this is like strip of trees, strip of flowers, strip of grass. It just accentuates the length of the building. If there was something that broke that up a little bit. I know there's a sidewalk there, there's that back entrance there, there's a sidewalk over here. That entrance looks like it's gonna be really nice on that side, the one that faces Edie. I don't know, just as a thought.
Yeah, to speak to that, our landscape architect definitely had looked at doing something like that, having planters along there. I think the reality is, when we actually looked and figured out how that, because if I remember right, the building sits above Edie at that point on the memory care side by, I don't know, 4 feet or something like that. So there will be a slope up just to get to the building from the sidewalk. Trying to get the number of trees in there that we needed in order to hit our canopy coverage didn't leave us with really a lot of room to do planters and that kind of thing. We can definitely go back and see if there's something, maybe we can do more of a, yeah, exactly, more serpentine, planting beds or something.
I was thinking the same thing, maybe more of the planting bed where a little, this doesn't have to be raised or articulated, but not.
Nothing linear, more,
not,
yeah. I
not
think
the
that's,
linear curve.
yeah, I think we could definitely look at, consider that for sure.
I think that would help break that up. I mean, I like the design of the building. I think the building looks very cool, and, you guys did our community center, right? And that was great, I think. So I'm okay with that. I think my main concern are the other buildings in the project.
The backs of the other building.
The backside. I think the front side looks very cool. I like the fact that the different planes are different heights and different depths and different dimensions and different materials. And I just felt like I read every page of this document. I can't say that much about the traffic study, but I read every page of this document, and I went through Matt's staff report, where he carefully documented, okay, they met this condition, they get 3 points, and now they met this condition, and they get 2 points, and I added all that up, and I get that. You've technically met those requirements. I think we're asking for something a little.
Well, I
Well,
want to
and is
point
it
out, yeah, I guess, and that's kind of what Matt, I think, alluded to in his staff presentation, is staff thinks that they've technically met this, but this is one of the reasons why this type of project comes to the Planning Commission, is you get to determine whether or not it's actually met it. So we give you what our recommendation is, but it's up to you to say, well, we think that this condition says that this standard means it this way. I mean, obviously, if it says it's got to be black and it's black, then it's black.
Yeah.
But these types of things, I think there is a little bit of subjectivity for you to look at. That said, you have to tell us exactly where it is, because if we're going to make a condition or say they need to do something, then we need to be able to say, here's why.
Okay, and then on that note, I did run upstairs and grab the Sherwood Town Center plan because I didn't have it memorized to be able to tell you exactly why it wasn't addressed in the staff report. The subject area is within the project study area, but not within the town center boundary
Itself.
So the study area, when you went through that planning process, looked at areas on the other side of Highway 99, but I can pass this up here. The study area boundary is bounded by 99W in that location. I was trying to figure out how I dropped the ball that big.
So we looked at it when we were doing the planning, because it was 6 corners.
So you may have remembered having discussions about that during the planning phase.
We talked about
We talked about crossing it. Metro had a
But 99W is the boundary, and so where those standards.
because Metro didn't want us to cross the street.
I wasn't here for that, so I trust that your memory is good.
Yeah, yep.
I remember it now, that we fought it because we felt that both sides of Highway 99 should be treated the same, and that they should be equitably pedestrian friendly, and that the town center of 6 Corners exists on both sides of our Highway 99 community, and we lost to Metro. Metro's determination was that they did not want pedestrian traffic crossing Highway 99, and they felt that including both sides of Highway 99 in our town center plat would encourage people to walk across the street.
Right.
It's hard to say that 99 is a pedestrian-friendly path.
Right.
So like for town center planning purposes.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think it was maybe ODOT and not Metro, I think.
Might have been.
Because of 99.
It was
But
somebody.
also, if that were to be the case, then there would have been a much lower or higher congestion threshold. So we would have been saying we're accepting more congestion on the highway, and that's where I think ODOT said,
Maybe.
no, we really
Maybe so.
don't want you to.
Maybe so, but again, apparently I'll remember it a different way, so, but we're not on both sides of the highway. So if we want to ask the applicant to reconsider the application, we need to show that the criteria by which they did it doesn't agree with how we believe the point system should have been applied, because it looks like a fail from the community standpoint when you're looking at, I guess in my mind, I thought you guys would be bringing a rendering that would show all 4 buildings across in a way that we could look at it.
Trying to get to that right now, actually.
Because as an aside, I was going to say, one of the things that the variance does for you, which is to your benefit, it enables you to have the buildings not be exactly in one single line. So I was thinking the variance was helping.
Undulate?
Yes, there's a great word. I like that. And so I was thinking the variance wasn't a bad thing, and that would help,
Did you just go in there and add those trees? How did you do that?
So.
Our landscaper's really good.
That's really good.
Just for clarification, if you wanted to refer to the commercial design review matrix, it starts on page 12 in your staff report.
Okay.
Just for ease
Now,
of
just-
finding those
I have-
requirements.
I have it.
So the elevations you see right here, we're showing some landscaping, but this isn't all the landscaping. So you have standards that contradict each other. You have heavy planting at 25-foot depth, yet you want to see more of the building. You can't see the building.
I don't think we want to see more of the building. We want to see less of an ugly building.
Oh.
That's not the same. That's not the same thing. However, whether the building becomes beautiful, so we don't care if we see it, then if it's covered more, then it needs to be maybe less articulated.
Well, take building D, for instance. We've got the articulation of the same material types that are on the front side, on the back side. We've got the same breakup in color. We've got the same breakup in material. What you can't see because of the vegetation is the windows that we've provided on that. I guess that would be the western side. Same thing goes for building F as well. We have windows on both the west and east sides. We have doorways that kind of break it up. We have different materials at different scales. And it breaks up the facade all along.
So
that
taking the
eastern
buildings
facade.
separately, building D comes in compliance, building F comes in compliance, but building B does not. It does not have any
Building B, that facade right there is internal to the site, and it actually that faces the
Care site.
driveway and the
Yeah.
assisted living.
I
And
got
we
so
have
confused
landscaping along there
because
as
in
well.
my world, 99 runs north and south, and so all your orientations got me confused.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
it's like I was trying to figure out which way north is.
So B, that backside's facing the.
Is it?
Yeah, correct. That backside of B right there is not facing 99.
It's facing the road that comes in.
Yeah, and
So
actually,
99 is D and F.
actually, it would be facing the undeveloped pad.
Right.
The majority of it, yeah.
That's
Correct.
where,
Well, I like seeing this much better.
It helps.
It helps quite a bit, actually.
Now, the trees are gonna be already matured, right? You're not gonna
where'd
put-
the picture go? Okay, I was just trying to find the
Maybe
thing.
we just needed a vision. We just needed to see it.
Oh, there's the
So something that I feel is missing
right
from those rear facades is the use of the wood
I love
that's
the wood.
that's being
Oh, look at
right.
that.
Right. So here's, never mind that taller building. That's still a
hotel?
Still a concept. Still a concept. It's
We're not
still
approving a hotel
Not
today.
approving a hotel. So The confusing part about Building B is that it's in the center of the site. So when
Yeah.
you see that blank facade, you don't know whether it's facing 99 or whether it's facing
Oh, it's
internally. So
facing the hotel.
yeah, it's facing the hotel. So 99 gets the pretty side is what's happening with Building B there. And then the rest of the buildings, as you can see, you see the dense vegetated
Right.
landscape there, which, mind you, this is a marketing image.
Right.
So we toned down that landscaping. We put it into scale, and it freaked us out because it's going to freak our tenants out. Seriously.
Because it's gonna block their signs.
It's going to block their entire building and their signs.
At maturity, the species of evergreens and other deciduous trees, it will be a continuous canopy along the whole frontage, without question.
Excellent.
Love it.
Well, I'll still get
Well,
pizza at that
we
point.
don't,
I'm sure there'll be a
obviously
sign
we don't
permit
want
coming
empty,
through that'll
we don't want
fix
empty
the
buildings.
problem of
so.
signage.
No, we understand. I certainly understand your point of view. I certainly understand that.
Right.
Is there gonna be extra road signage, like where it lists the retail tenants that
There'll
are
be a
there?
pylon sign eventually.
Sign's usually a separate application.
I was
Yeah.
I was just curious.
We're not there yet.
Oh, okay.
We'll
No, this is
eventually
actually
we'll get
quite
there.
beneficial. Thank you very much for this.
Helpful to you?
You know, I think about like,
So,
you know,
two
the
things.
change that McDonald's has gone through the past, 10 years where they've started to, redevelop their sites. Like the one in Tualatin is like, you don't have to have tilting fish and fountains. But when you drive in there, some of those, it's like you don't even see the traffic on the other side of the foliage. You don't even see it. I mean, they've isolated what they do. So it'd be kind of nice if, eventually if that's more like what it is. When someone is in your site, they can look towards 99 and maybe not even see that 99 is over there. They've entered your little
Well, kind of like
complex.
the image you see there on the screen. We're trying to give you a look of what kind of that activity, of what that interior streetscape would look like. So you've got the patio space, you've got Building B and Building C facing each other, you've got pedestrian activity, and you've got lots of landscaping on the interior, of course, as well. So, so kind of where you were going with that, where you've got kind of that interior, you've got that feeling of being within the center itself.
Right.
Right. Enclosure. There you
Right.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, and you certainly feel that when you're in Langer Farms Parkway to some extent. I mean, granted, it's a big parking lot and it's a big store over there, but you certainly feel more of it there. I think the landscaping breaks things up. They have highs, they have lows, they have deeps, and I think that it just makes it more interesting. It's not just a strip of stores around the edge. It's
Right, but the other part of that is the outside driving by looks just as good. The old spaghetti factory has 4 sides to it. They put their outside seating and they put outside patios to the restaurant front facing, and they have covered porches all the way around the buildings so that it does look nice. Red Robin does the same thing. They have a frontage that enables the corner to be nice looking. So,
And
sorry, that was.
But my awareness of those buildings, I mean, they're a much larger footprint and the dimensions are different, such that internalizing essentially the back of house operations in a different manner to allow for sort of that 3-sided design is more feasible than what we're
right.
talking about.
Yeah.
So, does anyone else on the commission feel bringing some of the material that's used in the front around to the back would be beneficial? Like some of the wood or some of the kind of the teal siding that's. I see some of it. I mean, to me, what's
on each
notable
building,
is-
we are showing that.
Yeah, I think some of it.
But I'm not seeing the wood on the
99 side.
on the 99 side. Yeah.
The wood would make it flow better.
Yeah.
I don't know that it has to be wood. It is the back of the building.
Or the blue.
I'm just I'm just saying, looking at the front, I mean, that's something that evokes a response
Yeah.
in me, so. Again, just trying to make it not feel so much like the back of a building, or at least bringing what resonates from the front, bringing that connection around to the back, again, because it does just face 99, so.
Sure. So, was that building C? We kind of brought the wood in there. If we did on every building, then it would just get mundane.
So is this wood?
Monotonous.
Well, so, I mean, that looks, I mean, to me, I see that more like kind of the stucco exterior that's on the front on C, because the wood is noticeably different on D, but the wood is noticeably different on C and B when you're looking at those storefronts. I'm just not seeing any of that material on the back, so.
Well, having it on the front makes the front pop.
Right.
Makes it nice, make it kind of, I don't think it has to be on the back. I think a combination of, landscaping like this and just trying to make it look less like the back of a building. I just think B is.
You just don't want it to look like B.
B is out. B is.
And that's
But B doesn't
facing.
I
face
know, it
99,
doesn't face
so-
anybody important, but the non-existent hotel, that's what it faces.
It gives us perspective.
Well, I don't know necessarily that I have any objections that's gonna hold this up, so.
So I have a couple more that oddly enough are not related to this at all, and you're just going, what is she gonna come up with next? So, I do not know where the picture is on this. You know where the trash enclosures are. I could find it, so, I know where it is, it's in the back where the.
About trash enclosures.
Yes, because Pride Disposal made comment on it, that they want a straight in, and they noted on their plans where the fourth trash
Right, there
area
is.
behind the fitness area.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
It is page 185 on my packet.
Yeah.
And I can bring it up. This trash area is right next to the residents that live right there. And I feel that it is a straight in, but if you moved it southeast to the center of that property line at the front corner of that building, Pride Disposal should be able to drive straight forward on that driveway and still be able to get to the trash compactor, and it moves it however 50, 60 feet away from the residences. Yes, because this is this tiniest little piece of paper. So this area is right next to the residence. If it moved to the end of this driveway, Pride would still be able to, not that I'm speaking for them, but the straight in for their trucks would be at the end of this driveway, and it would move it away, because this corner right here is the backyards of those people.
No, this right here is actually a landscaped area and open space, and
Yeah.
there's no residences in this area. That's why maybe you should go back.
So it just looked like it was awful close to the people that live back there.
Uh,
What about those three houses right there?
Well, the location of the dumpster would be right there. I see what you're saying, that there's certainly proximity.
So it's adjacent to these people's backyard versus if you move it down here, it's adjacent to a commercial building.
Well, it looks like it's kind of
Warehouse.
equidistant from these to if you move it from there to there, it looks like it's just as close to that unit.
Are you guys putting an aerial over there?
He's-
yeah. I think we might have lost the connection again.
I know, we'll wait so that they can find it. So,
There we go.
that's perfect. So my do you have a little pointer thing?
You can point right on there.
Where's- Yeah, I'll let you.
There we go. There we go.
You can see it, he's got it on there.
So the trash compactor in the
light.
back left corner of A is adjacent to that building, and it may be just as equidistance
If it's moved in front of A.
if it's moved in front of A where they're just coming straight in and straight back, but
It might be,
You're recommending this location here.
it just seemed less impact to the neighbors.
Right, so there's one consideration to be aware of with the location that you're suggesting is that staff had highlighted for us the potential for allowing a cross-access easement through to the property to the south if and when it were to ever redevelop. And that is the location that was identified to facilitate that traffic flow. Would basically be to come directly down that aisle and enter the site here. Yeah, and I think again, as was being discussed up at your seats, there aren't residences immediately behind this portion of the site. The closest grouping is here.
Right, your aerial is a lot better than me trying to compare this little tiny picture and
That's-
seeing how it inlays over top of the other aerial that
and
was.
that's not developable, is it? That little area behind it?
No, it's not. And so this is the general location. Actually, there's
there's
so
a
this
basketball
right here
court?
is the basketball court.
Yeah.
This is the nearest residence.
Right.
Here.
That's not a bad spot.
This is
Okay.
Yeah.
This is public right of way that is identified as the
Gonna be
walking,
Gonna be
right.
abandoned, yeah.
I believe the remainder of this is tract that was created for landscaping as part of the subdivision.
Okay, well, thank you, because
Yes.
when I looked at it, it looked like it was adjacent to residences, and I just thought as a
Understand.
consideration, we could move
Absolutely.
it away from them.
While you had this slide up, I wanted to ask, is there a pedestrian access from Providence Health over to the retail portion other than the frontage along 99?
There's a pedestrian connection through here.
So
along
connecting
this island, but not from Providence Health to the
F.
It seems so connecting. It seems like there would be a good opportunity from the front of Providence Health, which is actually the side that doesn't face 99, I believe, to just connect directly across to B. Because I'm thinking that if there's workers from the health center that want to access the restaurants or shopping on this side, most likely they're not going to go all the way down to the frontage of 99, then come across along 99 and then come back up into the development. Most likely they're just going to either walk along that road or that pathway or cut through the parking lots itself. And it seems like that has potential for creating a hazard. I was just thinking if there were crosswalks or sidewalks along that planter, along that roadway that looks to connect Providence and Building B, it seems like it would be a good benefit.
Unfortunately, if we killed Providence's parking stalls to accommodate that,
So, I mean,
That's
I'm
what
talking
you're
about
referring to?
this. Yeah, so that section there rather than that median, could sidewalk?
Could it be a park?
oh, take away the landscape and just make it a walkway?
That's what I'm curious about.
I'd rather have the trees.
Well, and then there's the.
But it's only
making sure
two
you-
rows of parking. They can walk that 30 feet. Besides, there's probably nothing in B they want anyway. Chick-fil-A is going to be in C.
Well, but they're gonna walk directly over to that.
Right?
And as long as Chick-fil-A comes in, then
Yeah.
I think we're.
Oh, great.
No, I think if you're gonna have a walkway, like the walkway that goes between the care center and the health center is good, and those are vertical that go through there, and then the one along 99, even though it's along 99, it's a nice grassy area. It's gonna be a brand new sidewalk. And I think walking across the parking lot is.
I mean, it's at least it's a small. It was just an improvement. I was thinking from the fitness center down to the retail shops. It looks like there's a large span that would facilitate a walkway connecting those sections. Is that correct?
Those are stormwater facilities.
Those are okay. So is there? Yeah. So that section, those sections there. So is there is there no pedestrian
Walkway.
walkway?
Asphalt?
It's in the shadow of Building B, but, and if you look on the site plan, we have accounted for a pedestrian connection across from Building A, across the development pad. To connect up with this walkway. There is also a crossing and a walkway along this elevation of Building B that
Okay.
will bring you down here and then across.
Okay.
So,
You got all your questions, Gene?
well, for staff, I had expressed concern. There were two conditions that I didn't see, which were page 86 in the staff report talks about a condition for the new signal. Where is that in the revised plans? 86 says, approval of Phase 1 public improvements shall submit a plan for a new traffic signal at Borchers. And have they submitted the plan for the signal already? Is that why the condition was removed? So where's the condition in the,
In your handout here, Exhibit M, it's under number F, and it is it's condition number 49. Prior to obtaining building occupancy within any phase of the development, the developer shall construct traffic signals at the Southwest Borchers Drive, Southwest Edie Road intersection, and street improvements along Southwest Edie Road in compliance with city and ODOT approved public improvement plans.
so the actual condition was prior to engineering department approval of public improvement plans, the developer shall submit a plan for a new traffic signal. That's before the approval. That's even before site plan approval. That's before the approval of the public improvements plan.
I think I'm gonna, part of this was us trying to coordinate what really needed to be in the conditions and what is just gonna happen anyways. The public improvement plans won't be approved without that.
Well, Connie said
Right.
that.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that the conditions were tied to development, that has to be in before we'll let anyone occupy any space. How that happens, they can't meet that condition without showing them on public improvement plans and having them be approved by ODOT and the city. So we don't need to condition something that's required to happen.
Okay.
So we wanted to make sure that the conditions were tied to, you can't do anything or have any people on this site until you put those public improvements in, which is what we were trying to tighten up and make sure that we understood. Because if something happens out of sequence or ODOT required something different than how we had it exactly written, it would require a major modification and another public hearing in front of the Planning Commission to do something that you really don't have a lot of say over, other than to say, okay, ODOT, we'll change our condition to meet what you're required, and that seemed overburdensome to the applicant to put them through that if that wasn't tied down at this point.
Okay, I was just trying to tie conditions of approval from the staff report into
Yep.
that.
No, I
So the
appreciate
staff
that.
Staff report, and I just need to talk logistics about how the staff report final is gonna look like for when we make the notice of decision, because that seems, if we're gonna make a decision tonight, that's a lot of crafting of language.
Which is why we tried to note everything and to show you the clean copy of what that looks like, and then the Scrivener's errors that you discussed previously with staff to annotate those, and if there are additional ones, we can certainly capture that and provide you an opportunity to make sure it captures everything that you think you heard tonight, and that we've got those appropriate
Okay,
things
so
captured.
the prior to final site plan approval, B23, and this, I'm just raising the question because we've been showed some pretty fancy pictures with a bunch of landscaping on it.
Condition that, yes. We can say, and as shown by the applicant tonight.
Prior to final site plan approval, so that's what I was getting, is the landscaping plan that's in here doesn't comply with what the city staff would have been using for the approval, because it's asking for them to submit a landscaping plan that includes the detailed information on tree sizes, types, distances, density, and other detailed information to assure full compliance with city planting standards. So the pictures that we're seeing in here and that have been presented by applicant may or may not be what is in the final landscaping plan. unless we say something.
You need to say something, like if you wanted them to change the articulation of the beds and stuff along Edie Road, you need to propose a condition and they need to agree with that condition. Otherwise, we are bound by what this code says.
Right.
And this code doesn't have that much detail to get what you're asking for.
Right, that's.
But if you propose it and they agree, we can put that in there and we would check for that at final site plan.
And then the conversation that was had previously was that the articulation of the plantings along the Edie Road were not going to be just straight, they were going to be curved, and they're nodding their head. Is that an agreement that you're going to be submitting landscaping plans that are?
I think we've beaten him down. I think we have.
So we have a proposed condition, if you want to hear it. It says that the final site plan shall include landscape elements along Edie Road planters such that the trees will not be linear in appearance and break up the massing. I would say.
Or maybe plantings instead of trees.
Okay, the plantings.
Plantings, because it could be beds, it could be grass, it could be.
One friendly amendment to that, or perhaps clarification, is that although that treatment should not be a problem to implement, it does need to account for vision clearance at the
Right.
driveway.
Right.
Yes. I think there's another thing that says you have to meet visual clearance that
Yeah.
is part of our code. So we're not waiving any code requirements, we're adding something in addition.
And so then the plantings that we saw on the rendering that was presented to us for the Highway 99 side, I don't know if that is what you intended it to be, the number of plantings, the number of trees, the number of evergreen trees is to me is an important part, because during the winter time that we have some pretty bare sticks in some of our planting areas.
So the renderings, in general terms, mirror the species and placement of landscaping that's shown on the actual landscaping plans, the submitted landscaping plans. So that sheet L series in Exhibit I, and those plans were drawn and prepared consistent with what is specified for the visual corridor landscaping in that section of the code. Sorry, I can't remember it chapter and verse at this point. But as far as 5 evergreen trees at a spacing of X number of feet along the entire frontage.
So B3 could be modified prior to final site plan approval. End of statement says, to assure full compliance with the city planting standards and matching the visual presentation at the public hearing and your Exhibit L 1.2.
From my perspective, I would say it's the exhibit, the formal landscaping
I
plan
think what he's
exhibit.
saying is that what was shown
Is L1
is
in?
what, yeah, and if you think about what you see along Providence and what you see, you know, in
Right.
front of the Cedar Creek Apartments, that's the visual corridor landscaping standard. It's not more than was required.
Right.
And so that's the type and variety of evergreen plantings that you're going to see
You know,
along
like kind
this
of what's at
frontage.
the end of Safeway as it faces 99.
I'm not certain that the Safeway, that doesn't have a lot of evergreen.
It's got a few trees, so it's gonna be more than that.
Yeah, so I know, again, I know, you know, if you look at Providence, there's
Right.
all, you can barely
Yep.
see the building. And then same with the apartments on 99. I know for a fact that those met the landscape standards for that variety, and so that's kind of what you see.
Okay, and the landscape doesn't deviate from residential to the commercial? Okay. All right. All right. Anybody else have any other concerns that we haven't already
Gina,
addressed?
I'd like to ask a question of the commission. Is anyone else concerned about a right-in only option into the property?
Well, you know, it comes down to, it's ODOT's road. You know, it's their intersection. They reviewed the plan, ODOT signed off on it.
But it's our lives that we have
Well,
to deal with.
I know, but we have no jurisdiction over that intersection at Borchers all the way out to 99 and down the road.
But ODOT has approved both options. I understand for the reasons why the developer would like to do the write-in only option. And as successful as I want this development to be, I trying to think of coming out of a busy shopping center with only one exit point makes me think I just won't go to it.
Well, 75% of the people are going to go out that entrance anyway. It's only 25% of the people are expected to make a right turn. So they're going to go make a right turn and make a right turn and go south on 99 because that's what they would have done if there was a right out.
Yeah.
So that's only 25%, I think, is what she indicated. So that's a fourth or less of the traffic that's added to the main entrance, but 75% of those people are going to go out that main entrance anyway, no matter what.
Because they were wanting to get to
They're
the
going to go
light,
straight
to
or
turn
left or
up on-
whatever.
Oh,
to
okay.
go
So
north.
it's
Because
not like
there's more directions that they can go.
They
people
can go-
making a right turn. There's only like a fourth, according to the traffic study, that
that
would
are
have gone
going
out
towards Newburgh. Everybody else is
Yeah.
either going Old Town, north on 99, or further.
I mean, I would like to add that there is a significant amount of our population that does live in that direction that exit would allow use from.
Right.
So, I mean, I understand the reasons for, and I understand the cost benefit constraints.
Right.
You know, I just have significant concern with a
Well, I
right
mean,
in
ideally,
only.
we just don't build it, because then there's no traffic, there's no extra traffic, there's no extra congestion, don't have a heart attack. But that's, we can't do that. It's like saying Walmart can't come here, and Home Depot can't come here, and Target can't come here. They come, they bring traffic, they add congestion. More people, we keep ending up in the list. It's the 5th best place to live in the country, or whatever we are, And why did you move here?
Because I'm a damn Californian.
See, there you go. And so you're part of the problem. There you go. And I think we can't avoid that.
But I'm here trying to fix it.
We can't avoid that. We can't suddenly say, okay, done. We reached 20,000 people. We're stopping. No more development. No more.
I'm not saying that. I wish there was another way that you could exit the property.
A tunnel underneath the memory care facility. I've thought about it.
Then, can we make that a
Take out the
condition?
bocce court. Take out the bocce court. Tunnel.
Okay, so we've lost cohesion. So I understand the concern. I think that
Yes.
the right-in, right-out would be a solution that would improve Highway 99, but it is above and beyond what an expectation of an applicant should be. And
Yeah. I agree with that.
his explanation of how they have to go down and they have to widen an overpass, and I mean, even trying to get into the wetlands to do any building, it'd be easier to have ODOT do that than it would be to try and get an independent developer
Yeah.
to try and get into the wetlands.
And the full issues or extent of that is not, as just a regular resident, I'm not
Right.
really privy to, but.
But it doesn't cause the applicant to fail their transportation, and the
Right.
light at Borchers causes.
And I think that's going to be a welcome relief to people making that left turn.
Well, and I think having that light at Borchers is, absolutely. And
And
I think it'll be an
hopefully,
improvement.
those two lights will be coordinated.
Oh, now you're asking for a lot.
Because
And I don't have
just
faith
because
in
you can
that.
turn left doesn't mean if the queue's already full of people, doesn't mean a left turn green light is going to
So
allow you to
before
turn
we
left. So.
go into deliberations on whether we're going to proceed, do you
Right.
have any more direct questions of the applicant, or does the applicant have any other concerns about the conditions that we've changed on the fly?
The only, excuse me, the only concern maybe is,
Oh, you've already accepted those conditions.
Clarify, because staff has recorded one actual condition of
Right.
approval. Were there additional conditions
No.
of approval that you're thinking that
It was only
we've
the landscaping
done?
that we
Okay.
officially.
Okay, I just want to make sure
And
we
we
didn't
strongly
miss something
encourage
that
them
you
to make the
asked.
backs of their buildings look better, but I don't think we're going to condition that.
So the backs of the building, and just, we'll do it under deliberation.
I just want to make sure we haven't missed anything, is
No,
what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
think
I have recorded one new condition.
Right.
And if there's more, because you said conditions, I just want to make sure they're wasn't something that staff has missed, and that it's on the record that we're requiring something.
I also tried to move them into the town center, so.
That's right.
Again, you can propose, if they accept, we will enforce when it comes time to final site plan.
Maybe this is for staff, but when we say,
What page are you on?
Just in general, I'm talking about in general, there's a lot of these change conditions which reference in accordance with an approved phasing plan. So that approved phasing plan, will that incorporate what we've discussed to date?
That's my understanding. That's why we did that, so that we weren't confused with what's phase one, what's phase two, what's concurrent, what's not. That you would propose at the time that you come in to say, this is what we want to do for phasing, and engineering would look at it in coordination with CWS, with ODOT, and all those things, and everyone would be in agreement on what could happen when.
So are we starting over?
No, I don't believe we're starting over.
I don't want to start over.
We're not starting over. What we are doing is, remember, this phasing plan that we're talking about is for the public improvements, not for the site development or the buildings or how you do your lots or whatever. This is so that I have a clear distinction of what items I'm going to cover in a compliance agreement.
Several compliance agreements.
Because there's going to be several compliance agreements based on how we break apart the public improvements. That is the phasing plan that you're going to submit to me, and that I will issue a compliance agreement based on that phasing plan. So you could have a compliance agreement for Edie Road. You're going to have a compliance agreement for improvements to Highway 99W. You're going to have a compliance agreement for internal site public development of public infrastructure. If it's broken apart, you'll have multiple.
Yep.
And
That's
it's
what we're trying to
consistent
get
with what we've
towards.
already been talking about. It's just kind of taking it out of the staff report, because it's like they were saying, it's.
Well, I understand
what you
I
guys
think
care
it's a
about is the above the
good
ground.
idea to take it out of the staff report. I do. I just want to make sure we're not starting the conversation all the way over. And,
No.
okay.
We're trying to make it simple and really keep it down to whatever the planning commission is going to make a decision on. Really doesn't matter to that. That's why we say, just give us a phasing plan. We'll discuss this off-site, and we'll do that relative to our discussions and what the public improvements we need to cover.
And again, it came down to if we were mentioning phase 1, 2, and 3, and if there happened to be a phase 4 because we were separating one part of the on-site for another part, well, there's no phase 4 in those proposed conditions, and it's a major modification, and you're going through a public hearing
Thank you.
process to talk
No,
about
thank you.
how does the public improvements go through. When we care when you're putting the stoplight in, when you're making the improvements to Edie, and when you're gonna have people on-site and causing extra traffic to go around, not exactly when you're hooking pipes together.
Okay. Right.
So that's why we were
That's
separating
kind of
when you're
that.
hooking pipes together from when you're doing all those other developments that are subject to Chapter 16 of our municipal code.
So as a planning commission, we care that there is a public improvement plan that Bob manages, and we don't micromanage. And then we manage what the site plan looks like and whether or not you meet the conditional use requirements, whether we believe that the variance is to the benefit of the community, and approve the site plan based on the size of the buildings, if I've recapitulated that.
Bob, wouldn't you prefer for us to micromanage you?
Don't answer that.
It was rhetorical.
All right, so does that bring you comfort that the end result of the public improvement plans are going to be
In line with what we've discussed today, yeah, definitely.
All right, if there's no other questions of the applicant.
No.
Regarding parking for the memory care portion, I'm just curious, I would imagine not, but are memory care and or assisted living residents able to have vehicles?
Mark, do you want to take this one? Okay.
Staff and visitors too.
Well, that's
Yeah.
and that's why I'm asking, because it seems a little bit full already with staff and visitors, so I'm just curious about, I know the expectation is that there wouldn't be, but I'm just curious if there is the ability.
Well, I think it said half.
Yeah, so for sure, memory care, nobody's driving. I mean, it's Alzheimer's and dementia, you're not doing that. Assisted living, typically, nobody's really driving there either. You know, a handful of residents or a few residents probably will retain their cars because they want that sense of kind of independence, but the reality is they don't drive them anywhere.
Yeah.
Predominantly, the parking spaces are used for staff and for visitors. You know, and again, we have a couple extra, you know, for residents if they want to kind of keep their car around. But yeah, the reality is very few residents are actually going to have any cars.
Okay. My question was partially about, you know, better understanding of assisted living, that definition, so,
yeah,
as well. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
So do we now
If,
deliberate, or?
if there's no more questions of the applicant and we don't believe that we're going to continue it, we'll close the hearing, take no more public testimony, and then deliberate and make a decision.
So if there were additional conditional uses, we would need to or
If you want an additional condition, now you should say it before so that the applicant would have a time to respond.
Right. So regarding the color scheme for the senior assisted living portion, will it reflect you the rendering that you showed in the demonstration today, or what's in our current packet?
It'll be what. Yeah, so it'll be what we've demonstrated today. So it's the lighter color. It's not going to be the dark,
Yeah.
you know, those dark panels. It'll be the lighter kind of gray color. And in reality, it's more of a, you know, like a weathered cedar kind of look. So it's that kind of a gray.
Is it, so it's more earth tones in the reds and the tans and the browns?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Okay.
It'll be actual cedar wood and then, you know, 2 wood look panels that is like a weathered cedar and a little darker cedar maybe. And then, right, some kind of a brownish red painted panel.
Okay. And then we're good on the back of 99.
Yeah, I believe the drawings helped clarify
Okay.
because I was looking at, so do we need a condition that states that the final coloring scheme will be?
I would recommend to make it clear.
Okay, so if,
Because what we would do is say that you have to be in substantial compliance with what we gave to Planning Commission, and what's in your packet is different than what was presented tonight. So in order that in the future, whenever they come in for that final site plan, whichever planner gets it, it's clear what your intent was and what you wanted and expected to see.
so would you,
And to further clarify that even more, the illustrations weren't part of the public record until the applicant just showed them. Now they will be part of the public record. And so you can make reference to those exhibits because they will forever live in the record of the project.
okay, so
And that's over what we received in our packets.
in
Yeah,
addition,
staff hadn't seen any of these drawings before tonight. We
Okay.
didn't have access to those to provide to you, so they weren't part of the record. Now they will be.
Okay.
so the additional condition will say that the color palette that was provided in the electronic version of the site plan and building elevations will be,
Well, I think we as a group can collectively give that an exhibit letter too. We were at N when we stopped.
Right, or we could simply modify condition number 2 that says this land use approval shall substantially comply with the submitted preliminary site plans and narrative dated April 28th, 2017, and the elevations presented during the public
Public
hearing
hearing.
by the applicant.
color palette elevations.
And staff has received an electronic copy of the presentation, so that's
Okay,
submitted.
so we've just revised one more condition, and are you in agreement with our revised conditions?
Yes. The only thing I would say is if we didn't.
Oh, wait,
No, the only, as I'm looking at it, all of the windows, I think, wouldn't be the white. They would match the darker gray or the darker bronze color.
the
So-
window,
The trim around the
Framing
windows.
around the
frame
windows.
Yeah,
around the
the,
windows.
right, the actual windows themselves, right?
oh,
And it looks like there's some inconsistency on that,
Yeah.
that some of them are darker and some
Yeah,
of them are
because
lighter.
it's
think
two
it's the
different types of
overall-
window systems, so one, right, that's the only thing, that they would all actually be the darker color that's down below.
oh, okay,
This one.
I see. So like this here, I'm,
Down. Right there.
where's your?
Down the, yeah,
See,
right.
he's pointing up
it
here,
would-
those
yes,
ones
right.
down there are the correct color, the ones on the
Yes,
second
the
and third
color
floor
dropped off
need to
the
be
others.
colored in.
I see.
So I just want to point something out, and you can do with it what you want. When we have a condition that's specifically conditioned in our conditions, and then someone comes in and wants to do something different 10 years from now, we look back and we say, well, are you doing a modification that's different, that's changing a condition that was specifically conditioned in the land use review? So that means if 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they want to change the paint color, we might say they have to come back to planning commission to get approval for that. And I want to, if you want to do that, that's fine, but I just want to make you aware that that could be a possibility in the future if it's caught, you know, that,
Or similar earth
or
tones.
similar, and that, yes, something like that.
Or similar earth tones, so in 20 years, your children can paint the building a
When
different
the
color.
earth has come to a different color, we can.
There we go.
Whatever happens.
It's fine.
Is that clear enough?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the renderings of the sides facing Highway 99, as a commission, the comfort level was such that the articulations on those 4 buildings and the tree plantings satisfy our concern about that street facing. And the big blank one that I had been looking at that I went, is actually the one that's B that's facing the hotel, so that
So we
helps.
feel the other ones have enough variation within each structure that faces the back of 99?
Well, I certainly thought, you know, except for B, I thought all the other ones were sufficient.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was at least definitely effort, you
Yeah,
know,
a lot.
and, yeah.
A lot better effort than what we've had at failures in other sites.
It looked different than what we had in our packet, enough that I'm much happier with that.
All right, so I think we will close the public hearing.
Thank you for your time.
This is a push through until we're done meeting. Otherwise, we would have left 2 hours ago. So, we will take no more public testimony. So there are 3 items before us, the variance, the conditional use permit, and the site plan. Is there any reason to think that they needed to be voted on separately? Did anybody have any issue with the variance itself?
I didn't.
We're taking 3 feet off and allowing them
Or
to.
what, 75 feet or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's a very small percentage. It seems reasonable because of the way the road.
Yeah.
And if it provides a little bit of undulation on the actual building elevations, we've actually done a better job. Instead of creating one blank wall on 99, we've created that, so.
And the conditional use permit on the health, fitness, and the assisted living, those were the.
So the reason for having the conditional use permit on the health fitness is because it exceeds 5,000 square feet, but there's nothing egregious about the location or the site.
Right.
And the assisted living facility, again, is the size of the building that requires a conditional use permit. And that a residential in a commercial requires us to look at it and say, is that the best place for that on a commercial site? Which, you know, creates a symbiotic relationship between people coming and going and a commercial building being there, so.
I feel like we're approving a lot of senior development.
We
Which
are.
isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Well, some of us are getting older. You're still pretty young.
Oh, I'm getting older too. Don't
Oh,
worry.
every day, every day. And then there's the site plan itself. So there's three items up there. Is there a desire to do them separately, or can we get one motion for all 3?
I think one is.
One motion is good.
All right. So is there a motion on the floor?
You mean to just read this?
And incorporating all the special language.
I just have to say that. I don't have to say the language, right? All right, here we go. Yep. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the city council for,
We are
right.
No, we are the final authority.
Are we the final?
Yeah, we're fine.
Other side.
Other side. Here we go. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission approve the application for SP 16, Site Plan 16-10, conditional use permit 16-06, and variance 17-01 Cedar Creek Plaza. Based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis findings and conditions, whether written before or tonight, in the staff report, which will be part of the staff report.
Got it all? All right, is there a second?
I second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve SP 1610, CUP 1606, and variance 1701. Is there any further discussion?
I have concerns, but I think we've thoroughly gone through them.
I think we vetted out everything. I
Yeah.
think the applicant did a good job bringing forth a lot of information. There was a
Yeah.
lot, and staff did a fabulous job vetting through all that information
Yeah.
and bringing back a very large staff report with conditions.
You know, so
of-
before we vote, I know it's been a long night, but this is one of our main corners in our city, one of our main corners in our city, and we take pride in those corners. There's only, after this one, there's only one left that's not developed. We'll probably be just as zealous about what gets approved for that corner as well. So, you know, we take it seriously. You know, the city appoints us into these positions to take on this responsibility, and we take it very seriously, and we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we possibly can. So that's why it's, you know, almost 11 o'clock at night.
And I think we care about the fact that it's gonna look good, it's gonna fit within our community, and that the traffic has been mitigated appropriately as much as we can, you know.
Right.
So, all right.
Stupid Cedar Creek.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right.
Do we need to keep any of that?
I believe that the
we don't have to
staff
keep
can
it, right?
You can take the
recycle it,
transportation fund.
What?
whether or not we would continue it or not.
Oh, I know. I couldn't, I started reading, I couldn't.
Before
I
we
looked at it
adjourn and
as
run
a bet.
away,
I don't know what
there was
this
supposed to
is
be a
all
high school
about.
work session.
All of it says one.
Can we continue that?
Do you know what,
Are we done? No.
Yeah,
there's announcements.
we still haven't,
So, we haven't adjourned our meeting, so if you could take your conversations outside so we can finish our business meeting.
So on that, I think part of it was I didn't know what was going to happen tonight. We wanted to do it for May 23rd, but we were like, well, is this going to be continued, and how is that going
Right.
to work? Since you've made a decision this evening, I think it makes it easier for us to plan on that public work session at your next meeting, May
So-
23rd.
Okay, that's fine. So are we gonna have it at a 6 o'clock work session then?
What would you like?
Yes.
6 o'clock work session, and then hopefully a short hearing so that we could be.
Well, there won't be a hearing.
So it'll just be the work session?
Right. Yeah, it's public work session, and we weren't, like I said, we weren't sure whether or not there was going to be anything else.
That's the
On
high
the-
school thing, right?
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
And what day is that on? again?
next, the
It would be
23rd.
the 23rd, Tuesday, the 23rd.
It would be better for me to be 6 o'clock.
So if we did like 6 to 7:30, and then I think that, Connie, correct, that's all that's on the agenda for that evening.
That's all we have planned right now. We have
Okay.
not put any public notice out for anything else.
Is
So
that the
we would
earliest we
not
can
be
do
able
this?
to meet any public notice requirements to put anything on the agenda. So I'm
myself.
confident to say that would be the only thing on the agenda.
So we'll plan on about 6 to 7:30. We'll be in touch with you in terms of like what exactly is going to be expected of you. What I envision is that the school district would provide a brief overview of what they're proposing, what they're talking about, and then going into tables and probably having, what do you guys think about what they're doing with traffic and zoning and pedestrian,
But we're gonna have work groups with citizens coming too.
yes, that's the plan. That's the
Absolutely.
hope.
The whole purpose is to get the
Right.
citizens
Yes.
and the parents and the teachers. All right,
So-
so 6 o'clock at instead of our next meeting, hopefully to get out by between 7 and 7:30.
That will be the plan.
All right, and we can all leave our packets here. All right,
Okay, thank you.
And if anyone has those blue
The bags.
I don't think she did
I,
yet.
you didn't give me, mine was on the porch in a stack. I
Mine
didn't
was
even get a
too.
blue bag.
I know, because we're missing three blue bags.
We're missing 3
Gene,
commissioners.
did you officially dismiss us?
We're closed. Go home.
All right.